Welcome to Fit Club Vegas, the ultimate fitness destination for visitors. Drop in for a day pass and experience our 10,000 square foot fitness playground. At Fit Club, you'll find state-of-the-art equipment and a sound system so good you'll pitch your headphones. Conveniently located 7 to 12 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip, Fit Club is a perfect spot for you to come get your pump while visiting Sin City. So come check us out at 4525 West Hacienda, Las Vegas, Nevada. Fit Club Vegas, more than a gym, it's a vibe. The procreators in the house. We talked about this again for a very long time. Yeah,
ever. You were on the top of the wish list too.
And
we got some stories.
I know
we got some stories,
and it's not in Texas. It's California, I should say. I mean, last time we did this, we were in California.
Yeah, on my podcast,
in your office there, and what a history, man! A lot of years.
15 years ago, this Olympia was in 60 years still hasn't happened, right? In 60 years.
I thought this could be the opportunity, if any.
Right.
If we talked about what we said long since Arnold Classic, I actually had a video of me announced, like, saying to Hany, he made history, like, we did in the UK. Maybe I shouldn't have jinxed it, right?
Yeah. You tend to do that. You did that when you said that Phil was going to win the Arnold that year in 2010.
Yeah, we also said Phil was going to win 10.
Yeah.
You worked with some monsters. You worked with some great athletes, man. We always talk about you as being probably the most precise coach there is.
I appreciate the
kind words. Because of, I think, your heart and soul that you put into all this stuff.
And it doesn't miss. Oh.
Your guys, you always drive your guys.
Yeah.
And, how we talked about it a lot on this.
A lot, yeah.
Last couple of years.
Because, there's a lot of coaches that come and go.
Yeah.
And there's a small group that have been here a long time. And then there's a even smaller group that have had high level success at a long time. And you've had the highest of the high for an extended period. So,
in the balance of managing the top two guys, I mean, you did it with Phil and I. You had it with Hany and Derek. And a lot of questions I get is, who does he favor?
Yeah.
And I want you to tell exactly what you told me, because there's no favoritism in your...
Not at all. I mean, it was, I don't think I could have done in this with Hany and Derek if it wasn't for the fact that I did it with you and Phil, because it really set a lot of the groundwork on how to really focus on the individual needs, because there's nobody any more different than you and Phil in terms of physique.
That's what I was going to say is I felt like Hany and Derek are a little more comparable than I was to Phil at that time, because Phil wasn't what he later turned into. That was the early stages of Phil.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the result of it. I'm talking about the actual...
No, the body.
The body.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was a much bigger body, I wasn't a shaped guy. I out-muscled everyone.
We'd always say the white guys are the hardest to get. Yeah. He's like, the brothers, you would say that they got the great genetics. That's what people say, yeah. And even for you, they're both on the same company as well. Yeah. So, because I back in the day, I couldn't, I was starting Evision.
But it's funny because we were testing EVP.
Yeah.
And I remember it was called the purple powder for everyone out there.
That was the code.
To talk about it. And I remember you literally bringing a white container. I think it's actually the container that it's in with no label.
Yep.
And it was white top and a white bottle. If nothing was colored on it, because I think now it's a blue top, right? That screw off.
Yeah, it was blue, and then just recently we're switching it back to the white.
Okay, so you said you'd mix this up and you'd say, just take it. And I'll be honest, it didn't taste that good at the time.
No, it didn't. It didn't, because we didn't.
But we didn't care.
No.
That was when the era of supplements where I don't think anything tasted good.
Yes, you're correct.
But it worked. I mean, I get in the gym and I train, and for the first time ever, I'm like, wow, man, like I took this liquid and it was crazy pump.
Yeah.
And we took it we took it when I was carving up.
Yeah.
I'm sitting at my bar.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
2009?
Yeah.
This.
Yep. I still remember when Phil had a supplement sponsor at the time, and he would put that's what he was used to. I mean, 15 years later, we could say that.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine though? Is like you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
But who would have thought you would have grown a brand to the extent? I mean, you helped alongside BSN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did some stuff, really cool stuff with BSN.
Your background is,
biology with emphasis and stuff because of the fact that I had the science and pre-med background, but I was geeked out on supplements because a lot of, most people know by now, but I was a natural bodybuilder. So everything that I did
with blonde hair.
Right.
With blonde hair.
And
I wish we had this picture.
Dude, it's somewhere.
I'm going to find it now.
I helped. I'm sure I got it somewhere. But it's, I think it's actually one of my my dad's last text to me. I still have in my phone before he passed away. Was some of my pictures that he had found that he took.
Like an old bodybuilding picture.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't realize is that you actually competed. Yes. Why don't you ever talk about that?
Because it's not nearly as, it's not as nearly as sensational as you guys were. And even that's why even people when I worked with my buddy John Whitty and these guys that were who've been around for a long time, and I got them for master shows, and people are like, oh, I only worked with these guys. They don't know all the other guys because nobody really wrote about them. There was no Instagram. I mean, when you won in 2009, Instagram didn't exist. It just came on board. There was none of that, right? It was the boards and the magazines. That's all there was. But going back to Evogen too, when I was doing that, you guys were with Muscle Tech, and I just wanted to create a product that was going to help my athletes become better. And I geeked out on nutritional supplements at a very young age because I was a natural bodybuilder my whole life. So when I was competing at the Ironman naturally, Lonnie Taylor.
Is what edge you have.
Right. Especially if I'm actually natural. But then later I found out I was probably one of the few people that was actually
really?
natural. Yeah. John Lindsay said it to me, He goes, honey, you're like,
well, natural shows are making a comeback now.
100%, which is great.
Yeah.
Which is great. But back then, I didn't even know about the Ohio show that I always like to try to take some of my natural athletes to, Dave Lieberman.
Yeah. Going actually 2 weeks.
Are you?
Yeah.
And Dave's a great guy, and he's and having that, I would have done that show if I would have known back then there was even that show. I don't even know, was it around in 93, 94, 95, 96? Yeah. Early. So, but at the time I just knew about the Ironman naturally, and that's how I met Lonnie Teeper, and that's kind of and Lonnie, and you and I are very close to Lonnie. And, he was the first person to write about me. And then late night,
I remember,
and then you and I went head to head as coaches, and you had Abbas Katami in 2001, and I had Quincy Taylor. And you were dissing me the whole lot. Dude, he was dissing me to Lonnie and said, I'm no Hany Rambod. You remember?
It was the early stages. I mean, you weren't even recognized. I mean, you were hanging with Coleman at the time.
Yes.
So
I was training Coleman.
We had kind of, we had a little background just because, we were kind of in the stage on that. Yeah, it was that team. I looked at that, even though you weren't coaching him.
No. I never coached him. I just coached his girl and
you
him.
Travel with him,
and I would help him with his
time. So you knew what was kind of going on.
I knew everything that was going on in terms of hey, he would call me up and he's like, hey, I'm got a photo shoot in LA. Also, I think I want to hook you up with Melvin, right? And then he was like, Melvin's looking for a coach. And then that's how I started coaching.
How many USA winners did you gather in a row there for a while? There was early stage. You had Idris Wardell, right?
Yeah, I had 2001. Quincy Taylor was my first person I ever turned pro, and he won the overall.
First I was at.
Yep, and that was 2001 here in Vegas. 2002 was Idris Wardell. 2003 we had Mike Dragna who turned pro, and then I think it was 04 or 05 was Bill Wilmore won the Nationals. Remember we were there, and that was with.
Did you do Ray Arty too?
Yes, Ray Arty. That's right. You're right. Gosh, I mean, Ray Arty's the one that introduced me to my wife, right? And then that was Ray Arty.
Didn't he have a gym around the corner from
you? He did. And then now he has a small gym that's not far from the old gym, but he's had several gyms in the Campbell area. And Ray, we would go in there and, train and whatnot. And there's old pictures of me and Phil and Ray, Matt Allen.
We trained at that Gold's Gym. Was that in Campbell that we did? Was that?
Yes, that was Campbell.
It was a really nice Gold's Gym that we would come out and train at.
Now my wife's store, Nutrition Palace, is right across the street, and it's no longer a Gold's Gym. They're American Barbells now.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
But that's where we went when we would train. But yeah, I think going back to the whole thing which you asked about, like the supplement stuff, did I ever think of this?
I think you thought, how much of a standalone product.
Yeah,
I think that's you because you launched. I felt like that was on the market for like the longest time ever before you launched other products.
Yes, because it was never meant to be a situation where I was going to be like thinking it was going to be as big as it is now. I was always just a solution for my guys to be better and win, right? Because, I mean, we would give it to you before cardio, right? And it was helping with helping you with staying fuller. Yeah. And you just felt better. You felt like the nitric oxide was helping the pump in your legs, and you were giving me feedback, and then I was trying to design it, but it wasn't like, hey, let's do a label or a flavor. It was like, it was a Sharpie, and it was, then eventually we came up with the label.
What got you into into the fitness space? Like, you obviously compete as a natural bodybuilder. What was the step to get you into that?
Well, originally what happened was my mom, when I was 13, wanted me to start exercising more, because she's like, you go out and play with your friends and they're the neighbors and you guys will go out and play football, but I want you to stay super active. And there was we were living right in the Campbell, San Jose area, and we got a notice from a local gym, and it was called Anastasia's at the time, right off of Winchester. And what happened was, it was like a 3-year membership for like $300. And my mom's like, let's go over there. I want you to see this gym. And I'm like, okay.
So was she into training, or?
No, she just wanted me, whether it was about school and exercising, because she was like, you need to be smart. I want you, because she comes from a very studious background, right? Like, she was a math teacher. My uncles, all her brothers were one's a veterinary surgeon, another one is a professor in Germany, another one is a doctor, another one is a chemist. I mean, there's 13 brothers and sisters my mom has, right? But all of them were brought up in a way where it was all about making sure that you were super, super educated. So she said to me, I want you to also, though, my dad was a coach, right? And what happened was, he said, I want you to still stay active and as you're growing up. And what ended up happening is, she was like, I want you to go to this gym. It's got a pool. I saw pictures of it, and there's a pool, because it was a postcard that came in the mail. Because you remember, we used to get flyers back in the day.
Yeah.
And this is probably 89, 88, 89, whatever it was. And so we ended up going there, and she signed me up. And it was this little Asian guy that looked like Mr. Miyagi. He owned it. And I saw a bunch of jacked dudes, and it was a small kind of local gym. And it had a pool. And then we walked past there, and my mom's like, she didn't get me the membership for the gym part. She's like, I think you should swim, and it's good. And your dad says swimming is really good because it's good cardio. So you should really swim, and you can just ride your bike here because it's not far. It's several, a couple miles away or whatever. But she's like, just take your bike and go over there. It's not like it is now where you're worried about
just going to say, do kids ride bikes anywhere anymore? Are they allowed?
Yeah, in our neighborhood in Texas, it's actually much better. It reminds me of California, but how I grew up. But nowadays in California, up to a couple of years ago before I moved, no, we didn't do that. But when I got there, I found my way into the gym because I saw all these jacked dudes, and a couple guys were competing, and then there was a poster for Mr. San Jose up on the wall. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But, I'm like, I don't know much about training. And then we had a big Samoan contingency of people that were in San Jose area. And there was a handful of these big Samoans that would train. And then, I had just hit puberty. I'm kind of got hair on my face. And plus I'm Persian. So it's so I looked older. I looked like I was 18, but I was 14 at that time. And I went from using the pool to finding myself in the weight room. And then I started training with some of these guys. And they're like, hey, come over here. Come here, Uso. These guys are just let me show you how to do this. And then all of a sudden my body started responding because I hit puberty right at the time. And then I really wanted to learn how to train because I was going to go into my freshman year of high school, and I wanted to be big enough to train. I mean, big enough to be able to play football, because I knew I didn't have the height, but if I was strong enough, maybe I want to try out. And then all of a sudden I got to be one of the strongest guys on the team. And then I was doing really well where the coach had me play both ways. And I found my niche. I didn't have a lot of stamina because at the time I didn't know I had asthma, but short bursts of energy. So I was a horrible wrestler, but I was a much better football player. So that's what got me into it, to say, look, let me put on size. Let me learn how to eat. Let me read. Let me get the magazines, all the Flex magazines at the time. Let me learn how to do that. Let me get some.
Do you remember who was in those books when you first walked with that?
I mean, Dorian. Dorian was
during his era.
He had just started coming up. Lee Haney.
Same as mine, yeah.
Right.
Lee had retired.
Well, you're only, 2 years older than me?
I'm 51.
You're 51, and I'm going to be 50 in January.
Yeah, so I saw, Lee Haney retired 91. I joined the gym, August of 91. And then, of course, Yates was the big thing as I was starting to learn. And
And Paul DeMaio. Paul
Yeah.
Paul DeMaio was also big. Like I remember at tour. You remember we used to have the little posters inside the Flex magazine, and it was like, you know, you put it up on the wall.
Yeah.
And then I had, you know, a pull-up bar in my room, and we put the pull-up bar in, and then I was doing, you know, pull-ups, and it was like, you know, and then I'd take my shirt off. My mom's like, "Oh, it's good. You're using the gym." Like she was like the best money I've ever spent.
Did she think it was from swimming though?
No, she thought it was from pull-up bars. Okay. She didn't know I found my way.
She didn't know
No, she didn't find my, you know, she didn't know I found my way into the gym side of it. And then we ended up going into some, you know, learning. And I mean, dude, it was a cool era because I had these big guys that look, I mean, I remember they were so jacked. Just like,
what was the first age you actually did a competition?
I was a teenager. I think I was 19.
And you remember what contest it actually was?
Yeah, it was an ABA show. It was a natural federation that was
and it was local
San Diego.
Okay.
And so what happened was I became a trainer before I actually started competing because I had gotten a job at 24 Hour Fitness, and I had just graduated high school, and I decided I was going to go to JC at West Valley College, and then I was going to get my degree in biology, and then eventually transfer either to like UC San Diego, UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, Cal Berkeley. Those are the schools that I wanted to go to. And then I was getting, you know, I ended up getting the job, and it took a 2-hour interview with the head trainer, and he's like, "Look, dude, everybody here has a 4-year degree. You just graduate high school. Why should I hire you?" And I said, "Just give me a 15-minute interview." And I talked the guy into it, and the guy's name was Dr. Joseph Bruno, and that's where I met Ray Arty at that job. Me and Ray were trainers at 24 Hour Fitness, and at the time, it was really, really important that for Dr. Bruno that they brought in educated people. And so he ended up telling me, he goes, "Look, man, I'm just going to tell you this." And he was this thin guy with a mustache. He was kind of like the professor, like, you know, nutty professor kind of guy. But he went to Notre Dame, and he had his own certification, and he had this big old like Bible that he had created that made his own certification. And that's where I learned a lot of the basics of the nutrition and all of those pieces outside of the stuff that I already knew when I got the job, because he took the 15-minute interview. It ended up lasting 2 hours. And then he said, "Look, I'm very impressed. How's your supplement knowledge?" And I go, "Well, you have arginine, ornithine. This is going to increase growth hormone. This is going to be this." And you got to remember,
in these early stages, like,
yes,
people weren't talking supplements like this then.
No.
Very basic.
Yes. It was a lot of like single ingredient. This is what this.
I mean, did NO2 even exist then?
No. I mean, no. I think that not at the high levels that it is now. I mean, that didn't get bigger until arginine AKG and all of those other things started kicking in.
I thought like BSN was kind of the
BSN. Yeah, MRI, BSN. Those guys are the ones that made the arginine AKG super popular. You know, but this was way before that. This was like, you know, arginine. They knew that it helped with vasodilation of blood vessels, but at the end it was really more about just making sure that you understood what, you know, it was like BCAAs, amounts of protein, those things, you know, and egg whites and how they're more bioavailable. I mean, you know, and then like the proteins tasted like gasoline back then. It was really, really bad, and then, you know, because of the processes they were using, and you know, what ended up happening was the guy said, "Look, come in tomorrow. Do a practical with the fitness director. If you can convince him, you'll get the job." And the next day I went in, I said, "Okay, I'm here to give you a training session." He goes, yeah, I got my notes from you. Dr. Bruno's pretty impressed with you, but we got to see how you do with the practical.
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, what am I supposed to do?" And he said, "You're supposed to train me." And the guy's name was Del Calanta. I'll never forget this. Filipino cat, super nice guy, but he was one of those like ball busters. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, I go, "What do you want to train?" And he goes, "You choose." I said, "Okay, legs."
Oh, no.
So we did supersets. I had him supersetting pre-FSD7, right? Yeah. Supersetting extensions with leg press. And we had done, some other exercises. And then I had him doing some, I think, Smith machine squats and everything else. And then Dr. Bruno came over at the end of the workout, and he was just taxed. And he goes, how did it go? And he goes, "It was the best workout I've ever had." And then he goes, "Okay, you're hired." He goes, so that's how I started my...
And how did you learn that, though, is just...
I was watching... No, I was reading the books from Arthur Jones.
Okay.
So a lot of the principles.
Of course, but people don't know if people that don't know Arthur Jones...
Yeah, so Nautilus, he created Nautilus, and his techniques, and a lot of the heavy duty stuff came originally from some of the stuff that he did, and then pre-exhausting, machines. That's why you see like the leg press machines that were built in with, remember, with the leg extensions, and those were all from his principles, right? So a lot of those things, and he was really a big believer, Dr. Bruno was, on Arthur Jones. So we took a lot of those techniques and then really focused on making sure that I was putting them through the workout and said, hey, this is how I derived this workout, and this is how we were doing these 4 exercises, and then they said it was a great workout, it was the best one he ever had, and then I went in there, and then I had at the time long hair, Can
you show us a picture of this too?
Yes, I'll show you. I'll show you a picture.
Now just send them to me, and
I'll send them to you. I'll definitely send them to you. I had long hair. I had hair down to here, right? And I looked like Jesus. Everyone's like, really? Yes. I had because it was curly,
For Halloween, you should be the 1991 version of Hany.
Yeah, it was and they were like, wow, you had curly hair and it was long, and so what ended up happening was that I got in trouble at the gym, right? And I'm like, hey man, the same guy. It's like he's got a problem with you because you need to sell more. And you're not professional because you have this long hair.
Lick it, clean it up. Yeah,
you clean it up. And I was like, well, I don't like to clean. I mean, most people know. Like, I shave for you today, Jay, but I'm never shaved. You guys know that, right? And the guy's like, the fitness, the general manager came up to me, a guy named Mark Pauly, and he's still like big with.
All these guys' names. I know they're going to be so happy.
Mike Apple,
shout out, yeah.
All these guys, John Romeo. Everybody in all the states, they're all over, and they all are actually part of Mark Mastroff, who was the owner at the time. They only had 19 clubs when I started with them, maybe 16 at the time, and then he ended up growing it to hundreds, and then he ended up, becoming very, very successful, and now he's part of Crunch, UFC gyms. He owns all of those, and all of those guys have all.
What was the big chain then, though? You were working for 24 Hour, but it was just like Gold's, Worlds, all that.
That's it, and then 24 Hours, the one that I worked for, and then I eventually ended up training the owner. So there's 2 owners, Leonard Schlem, who was the money guy, okay, the big money guy, and then you had Mark Mastroff, who was the operator.
Okay.
And then, so what ended up happening was Mark Pauly told me, he goes, look, you got to learn how to sell. I go, what do you mean? He goes, if you want your fitness director off your ass about like he's nickel and diming you about learn how to sell packages. And I go, okay. He's like, yeah, because he says service is king, but gross is godly.
And what was, if you could take one thing away from what he taught you, what would you say that is?
That is the fact that as good as you are, it's still a business at the end of the day, and you still need to make sure.
Yeah, but if you provide a great service, I mean, that's where you're.
But see, I didn't know that at the time. I remember I was 18, 19 years old. I just thought, okay, I could be a good trainer and walk around like, hey, look, Hany's really good at putting people through workouts. So what I did was I ended up that week writing more gross than anybody in the entire company by like maybe double. And then he turned around and he said, and they, remember, I don't know if you remember back in the day, but they would win jet skis. They would win trips for the staff, for the top salespeople.
Yeah.
So I won this luxury vacation. I got all this shit. But what it did was it just got everybody off my back about my beard and my hair. And they said,
so you didn't clean it up?
No, they didn't have to. They just said, he's Teflon Don. That's what they called me. They said, you don't mess with him. He makes us too much money. And he said, just keep those numbers up.
Didn't know this, did you?
And you're
gonna find this picture. We're gonna post this up, man.
Yeah. And and he says, you literally can, wear what you want, and you can just have your hair down and you don't have to shave because you're making everybody so much money that now all of a sudden all the bonuses went to guy ended up getting a new car. The guy's like, it was like awesome. And I was just like walking around like, okay, let's do this. And that's how I learned how to.
Early stages.
That was early stages, but that's how I learned from the sales guys. Because I'm like, I don't want to be a sales guy. I just want to be a trainer. And it's like, no, you still need to connect. You need to still have a call to action to be able to connect that. And that's how I learned how to be able to really squirrel away money. And I bought that BMW, the M3. I still have it. I have an E30 M3.
The one in your garage?
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. When I went by there, he showed it to me.
Yeah.
Look, all your other cars are like new. I'm like,
yeah,
a little older.
It's a 1989 BMW M3.
That people probably the hunt for that car.
Yes. Yeah. That car now is skyrocketed.
Do you drive it once or no?
No. It's like, I need to drive
I don't
much
think
more.
it was running when I was there first time.
It was running, but it was just like, it's on a battery tender. It's just sitting. I gotta drive it more. You know how I am. I got all these cars.
Much better garage space now than you used to have, though. Oh, right.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. But it was one of those things that when you or Phil would come by.
I was always a car guy, you know that.
Yeah.
And I was a huge BMW guy.
Remember the year you bought the Ferrari?
Yeah.
You drive it. Yeah. And I was driving it. You bought a 430 Ferrari, a black one. And I remember you're like, you drive it. I'm like, you sure? Yeah, you drive it. You like this shit, bro. And he,
Don't you have one still?
Yeah.
You have the
Scuderia.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I have the red one. You have the black one, and I have the red one. But it's
Yeah. So talk a little bit about I mean, we say the early days, but like NPC, IFBB, like where did you get that introduction to?
So when I did that first show, it was a complete and utter shit show. I flew to San Diego. One of my clients, he's like, look, I'm going to just take care of us. Flying there, getting a hotel. He ends up getting us a presidential suite at the Hyatt in San Diego. It's this room that's like literally 3,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because he was a global travel director at Applied Materials, Kevin Devine, him and his wife, they were some big clients of mine. So and anybody who's a trainer who's listened to this podcast knows that you have a couple of really cool clients that are just like, they're down for you. They're like, they'll sit there and, hey, what are you doing? Especially when you're struggling, when you're starting out, 18, 19 years old.
And help you out.
And they want to help you out. And again, I was a teenager, did the ABA show, found out that the guy that came in last minute to do the show against me, his dad, he goes, yeah, my dad's there. I go, what do you mean he's there? He's in the audience? And he goes, no, he's a judge. No, what kind? Yeah. And I was like, and the guy beat me, and he's like, he felt bad. He's like, I feel like I have to give you the trophy because your face is sucked in. I'm 148 pounds.
And who dieted you?
Myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I dieted myself. There was, I was training at the time at World Gym in Campbell, and Scott Wilson.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. He was very popular.
Yeah, he was like super wide.
Yeah.
Right. He had a meter wide, shoulders. And Scott Wilson, that was his gym. Mark Rifkin, those guys. And then I would go in there and I'd like try to like get some advice, but I just kind of like, I picked all the people's brains.
That's how I started.
Yeah. And that's what I did. And then I would ask him, and I'd ask Mark, who was helping Scott at the time, who was a co-owner of the gym. He said, Mark, what do you think I should do? He goes, bro, like you look like I did when I was on drugs, and you look better. I don't even know why you're asking me this stuff. And I said, well, I'm just trying to get more information.
What was the dream? What was the
dream was,
were you chasing a bodybuilding dream? Like,
no,
was there any thought?
No, never, because my mom had cancer when I was 14.
Okay.
Right? She had leukemia. So I was very in tuned and realistic with my expectations, because I didn't want to be able to push the envelope where I knew that you can create gene expression. I mean, again, I was science geeked out, right? I don't want to turn around.
Did you believe in that? Yeah.
100%. Like I said, like if you're taking growth hormone, how is your body going to be able to understand good cells versus bad cells and gene expression, right? So I even knew about that back when I was 17, 18 years old. So that's why I said, look, what I want to do is just become a really, really the best natural bodybuilder I can be. But by the time I turn 25, if I decide to do something, I want to max it out, right? And then you also it was very taboo to take drugs early on for people that are short, because it could stunt your growth. So I needed every inch I could possibly get, bro. Like my mom was 4'11", my dad was like 5'2", 5'3", so I did okay, So
giant,
yeah, compared to them, yeah. So but those are the reasons why I knew to limit my expectations. But what got me hooked was that when I got the job as a trainer, I started helping people. And then one of the guys was a natural competitor that told me that he's like, hey, can you help me for the show in Laughlin, Nevada? Yeah. And that was the first person I ever prepped. Okay. And out of all the people's names I remember, his name is, I'm blanking on right now, but he ended up doing, I believe it was an ABA show. And he ended up talking me into going with him. Because he's like, look, and again, he had a sponsor that was his buddy, an older guy, Greek guy, and he had a lot of money, sold his business, and he was living vicariously through his buddy. And he said, look, man, I'm going to pay for you to train him, but I want to pay for you to go and just be with him and carb him up and do this.
Which is coach before coaches exist.
Exactly. And just kind of, help them out. And I was like, well, look, man, I'll try it. And I can remember having the conversation with my mom, right? I'm like 19. I think at the time I maybe had just turned 20. I'm going to go fly to Laughlin, Nevada and go help this guy out. And he ends up winning his division and the overall and beating the local guy that was the favorite. And then all of a sudden the gym, buzz was like all over. And then like the other gyms started like hearing about me helping this guy. And then it's just word of mouth because there was no internet.
What year was
then? This is back in 1993, 4. Yeah, 93, 94. And so, yeah, like I said, it was I think my dad has still took a photo of my my coaching badge from where I was when I was.
So that was so you kind of looked at that direction and
I geeked out.
And you started just getting involved, and I mean, you became tight with the promoters, I guess, right?
No, I mean, that came later. I mean, what happened was I just ended up getting a reputation right away about being able to help people. So then, I was coaching, training people. And then now I did my first show and my guy wins the overall, right? And the very first show I ever train somebody. I mean, I go there and we do the show, come back, and there's like a huge buzz. The photos are all floating around. And then I met Linda Murray, came to our gym to do a signing. And then
And she was Miss Olympia at the time?
I'm trying to remember.
She had to have been, right? Or was Corey Everson then?
No, I think she was Miss Olympia at the time because she was getting autograph
away. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was doing autograph signing. So she was like there again, 93, 94. You can look up who was Miss Olympia in 94.
It was her.
I think so. But because she came there.
Kim Chebesky by then.
I don't know. But yeah, so what ended up happening was that I got to meet her because she was doing a tour of certain 24 hour, and back then it was called 24-hour Nautilus.
Okay.
Back then. And then it was
Linda Murray.
Was it? Yep. So she was there.
91.
Okay. Yeah. So that was right in the middle at like 94, 95. She came in. And then what was cool was that I'm just like, she was, I mean, man, she looks like she's barely aged, Still. Yeah.
She's in her 60s.
Yeah, man. Like, she's amazing. She's honestly one of my favorites because she's just the way she carried herself and everything else. She was super classy. And then what ended up happening was I started going to some of the pro shows with some friends from the gym.
And you had probably some good Joes around you, though.
We had the San Jose Pro.
That's right.
And that's where I saw Cito for the first time.
Okay.
And so Mike Francois
told this story the other day.
Yeah.
Tell this story because it's actually really cool.
So what happened was I went there and I think it was, you can look at Mike Francois' competition history.
He won 95 Arnold.
Right. So this was before that. So this
Okay,
might have been before. What year did he win? What year did he win the San Jose? I was there.
He won.
94?
He got his pro card in 93 Nationals.
So 94 is probably when he did the San Jose, or it was 95 when he did the San Jose. It was right around that time.
And he won the Arnold 95 also. I think it was 95. Mike Francois.
94 United Champions, Chicago.
Yeah, what year was the San Jose Pro? That was the year I was there.
So he competed there?
He competed there. And then remember how you guys used to sell the photos?
Yes.
95. So that's it. So 95, he won that. And that might have been either right before or right after the Arnold, where he won the San Jose.
It was after.
It was after. So I think he went and peaked at the Arnold and he went there. And then I remember I'm walking over and you're getting a fan picture and all this. And I'm just like, fuck, who's that guy that's coaching him? Right? Like who coaches these guys? And I saw Chris.
Yeah.
Chris. And how old's Chris now?
56 or 7, I think.
Yeah. So he's about 7, 8 years older than me. Right. And at the time, 95.
Because he looked pretty young to you, I'm sure, then. He was pretty big still. He was still...
Who's that?
Chris Aceto.
Yeah. He was, but you got to remember, I was 20 because it was 95. I was born in 75. I was 20 and he was 28, right?
Yeah.
So he's 28, 29. So
we were working together by that point.
Okay. And so I came over and I looked and I'm like, okay, again, I know I'm never going to be the Mike Francois, right? But I'm like, hey, maybe I could like learn about what these coaches, like who, like, just it's interesting. Right? Because you're like, well, you don't know about these because there's no internet, right? The internet then was really weak, and so I'm just like, okay, there's a guy there, and you, as you get older, you get a little bit, okay, then there's the Chads and the Chris's were like the big guys at the time, and then, but it was one of those things where I'm just like, oh, I wonder if somebody can make a living, and I'm just like, okay, who knows? I'm trying to go to med school, but at the same time,
Well, he was running like these camps on the weekends. Remember, he did body
with Laura Cavral, right?
Yeah, but they were running their weekend getaways. Come stay with us. They did it in Florida on their boat. Then they had the condo in Old Orchard. Teach you about cooking, training, take you to the gym, stay with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like 2 couples max. So it was 4 total people. So they were residualizing that. She was guest appearing. She was doing merchandise. He's the one that told me about merchandise, right? 8x10s and that kind of stuff. So there is a revenue stream, but it's like, how much can you make when a guy's winning? What does San Jose pay? 10 grand or
probably.
Dude, which is crazy because it was always 10. It was 10 grand even up till
this year was 10. We talked about that. We had Milos on here. I'm like, the first show you did, he's like, yeah, the winner got 10 grand. I'm like, yeah, they still get 10 grand.
Yeah. Well, the first time, and that gym was Scott Wilson's gym, is the first time I saw Milos. Right.
Okay.
And Milos was getting ready for the Olympia. And he came in here, and again, I was a big Dorian fan, right? Like Dorian Yates was the shit,
we all
right?
thought.
Yeah, Dorian was the man, right? And then I'm like, who's that guy over there? Was he getting ready for what show is he in? Like Olympia. And I'm like, he's going to get crushed. Right? I was like, because I'm seeing Scott super wide and, Scott was at the end of his career, but it was like, he's just still wide as hell.
Is he blonde, Scott?
Well, he had such little hair, but it was like blondish, right? And he was so wide. And then I'm seeing, Milos, again, looked great, but you see
Dorian. You can trash him.
Well, no, it's not that. Because I also ended up going to see Dorian pose, and he had guest posed for Gary Gideon, a guy that owned the San Francisco Pro, and San Francisco Amateur Show, and it was a week after the Olympia, so he still had his pro tan on, and he would go over there, and I'd drive up to San Francisco from the South Bay, and then it was amazing because you got to see him full. And I'd see Dorian guest pose, and it was the freakiest. I still have like little Polaroid pictures and shit of Dorian guest posing in 90.
And what did he look like?
He was amazing. Like
I try to tell. We had this.
He looked like an absolute freak.
Yeah. It's people looked at him in the books, and they don't understand what it was like in person. I mean, they always have these comparisons about Phil, like the dream down.
Yeah.
Phil, Ronnie, myself, Dorian Yates, and everyone's like kicking Dorian Yates to the end.
Yeah.
They don't understand.
No, Dorian had a certain kind of thickness and graininess that was not, you know how Phil became Mr. 3D, right? And I'm pretty proud of that because of the fact that I would always say, well, what do you think of his physique? And I literally coined the term, and I just kept using it, and then people started picking up on the 3D look because he was so, who was wide, and then you had Phil that was 3D, and then you had a density to Dorian, right? That when I saw him in person, and I still have the picture of him and I'm shaking his hand, and I'm wearing a California Crazy Wear shirt,
Of course, we all wore his uniform.
Yeah, dude, it looked like a picnic table, like that you made into a shirt, with the red and black or green, and then you'd be wearing the tights, the tights, with the stripes on them.
Ronnie wore the plaid outfits.
Yes, the plaid ones were the big ones too. But we were when I remember seeing Dorian, and I'm just like, it's crazy, right? This is nuts. But it was good because it gave me perspective because I knew I had so much self-awareness that for a young age to be able to say, look, dude, I'm never going to be this. So I'm going to just try to be the best version of myself and compete. And one thing I regret doing, though, is I would compete every other year, and I never really became as good as I could have been.
How long did you do it for, though, total?
My last year till I blew out my knee was 99.
Okay.
And that was my last show. And again, I never was able to get into that deep conditioning because I would always just like every other year. The time that I looked my best was 99 because I did 98, 99, and it's the first time I did back-to-back. But because I had so much going on and I just knew I was limited genetically, I'm like, I'm never going to have striated glutes. I'm never going to have this and all that. And I looking back at it, under 8, I didn't, have proper recovery. I would be sore for 7 days. I mean, it was just really like, I just didn't have the knowledge at the time. And I was always too conservative with my food because I was just scared to eat. And I didn't have somebody say, hey, dude, you got to eat more. I didn't have anybody to lean on. I didn't have the internet to be able to like, hey, let me go get a coach or something like just kind of like what you said.
Yeah, but there's no coaches then.
No.
I don't think I ever called you my coach. I called you like a nutritionist or advisor, but I don't.
Why is
coach,
that?
I don't know. I think coaches now. I think coaches is a term it's used now more. You were my trainer. That's what I called you. You were my.
I remember
trainer.
that actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like because I felt like you taught me a lot in the gym and the nutrition. I felt like it all kind of worked together. So I guess we just had different terms. I mean, there's so many terms now. It's like bulking, right? We didn't use bulking. Like it was off season, pre-contest. So there's different terms now to everything.
Right.
So when you had to realize that, hey, these stages are done, and you started chasing, the coaching side.
Yeah.
What was it like being around Ronnie Coleman? Because I felt like he kind of was the biggest name that you became around.
Yeah. So
at that time,
that was all again thanks to
Did
Lonnie.
he teach you things?
No. So he taught me that he is an alien and he's from another.
Why? Because of the way he trained?
Well, I'll give you a little backstory on how we met. We met in 2000 at the Nationals, and that's where I met Quincy Taylor. He was waiting for his coach at the time, which is Charles Glass. Charles didn't show up. I don't know what happened to it, but I remember Lonnie coming up to me, and this was in New York City. And
Victor Martinez won the overall
that's right.
show.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then
I was there.
Were you there?
Yeah.
And so I was there, and I get a nudge from Lonnie saying, hey, can you help this guy? His coach isn't here. I go, who is he? He goes, his name's Quincy Taylor. And I said, okay, who is he? And he's like, dude, he's 6'4", he's 270 pounds. And he's doing the super heavies. And he doesn't know if his coach is going to show up. I was like, sure. And then then Lonnie goes over and tells Ronnie Coleman, same thing. He's like, and so him and I end up looking at Quincy, and I just tell him, look, dude, I'm not your coach. But he goes, dude, I don't know what to do. My guy's not here, da-da-da. And I still don't know what ended up happening. But I did see Quincy here the other day for the first time in like over 10 years, 15 years. And we were talking about it. And he told me, he goes, I don't know what to do, but if you can give me like a backup plan, that'd be great. And I said, look, I think you need to drop about 5 or 6 pounds of water. You're a big guy, but if you can do that, I think you'll look good. But that's what I would do. And then Ronnie said, same thing. He just said, yeah, whatever this guy said.
Yeah.
And that's when I met Ronnie for the first time. And he was like, oh, so where do you live? And then he started talking to me about like asking me questions and all this stuff. And I said, oh, I live in San Jose. And basically
you guys became like best friends.
Well, we became really good friends because he actually asked me to work with Alti, his girlfriend. At the time. And so his girlfriend at the time, Alti, was competing in fitness. And so when we became friends and we were kind of hanging out, and every time he would come to San Jose, he just ended up saying, I'll just come and stay with you. And I was like, sure, you came and stayed with me. Phil stayed with me at my house.
Was she living near you or?
No, she was living in New Jersey, but she would stay there. And then he was like, hey, come out. She's going to stay here for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I would go stay at Ronnie's house. And that's one of the reasons why now I live in Dallas, because I loved the DFW area so much from like just the good times I had there when I would go hang out with him and Alti and then, you had Ronnie's mom.
Did you train at Metroflex when you play with him?
Yes. I would go train at Metroflex with him. And then lots of times I would just train next to him, but I would not train with him because I'm not, I just help him with the dumbbells. I mean, that was a workout in and of itself.
Yeah. You said alien. What? Yeah. Tell me.
Well, so the whole point of Ronnie is that, as you know, and then you and I met, right? So let's go a timeline, right?
Okay.
In 2001, right? Or 2000, when did you do?
Two, I think.
No, what year did you? No,
I guess second at the Olympia was after, and it was after the Arms.
It was before that. No,
okay.
It was when you came to Gold San Jose and you did the M3 Pro, whatever.
Pro M3 for ISS.
That's right, and you were doing a thing there.
Yeah, I finished with them in 2003, so it had to be early before that.
Yes, so I think it was 2000.
Okay,
when you came to do an appearance there,
and you came to see me.
No, that was at my gym.
Oh, okay,
and you were there at my gym, and it just happened to be there, and then we started talking. And then you know a lot of the same people and everything else. And then
you came and you spent time with me though.
Yes. When I saw you.
Aliso Viejo.
That's right.
It was a holiday.
It was Easter.
Okay, that's right.
And your sister was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was in 03, I think. That was 03 or 04. So you had one.
It was 2.
02?
It was 2.
Okay. And, but that's when I was down there and I was seeing Abbas. you know.
Yeah.
We got to see your old client.
Here.
Yeah, out in Orange County. But anyway, so what ended up happening was it was a me working with Alti, and then I became really close with Ronnie, and then Ronnie was like, "Hey, bro, we need to go. We need to go on vacation. You should get my girlfriend this time." And then him and Alti, they were going to go, and I was like, "Where do you want to go?" And he's like, "On a cruise." And I've never done a cruise before, right? I didn't know it was a thing.
It was popular in the early 2000s because I did my first one in 2000.
You did?
One and done, yeah.
Dude, he talked me into it. It was the funnest time ever because it's like a floating buffet. We got to like go to bed, wake up, and you're in a different spot. And then the funniest thing is the reaction. Everybody would see him because it was right after the Olympia, right? It was right around my birthday time. We'd always go, December, January.
Yeah.
And then we ended up having this 300-pound silverback gorilla everywhere we went. And then he was like, dude, it's time to go eat a midnight buffet. Yeah. And I'm like...
He stays up all night.
All night. And then he's like knocking at my door first thing in the morning. We got to go eat breakfast. I'm like, bro, like, I'm not a pro bodybuilder. I can't eat like you. But I'll go. So we would go. And even
I think he still goes on cruises.
He does.
With his family.
Yes, he does.
He does.
We ended up having some amazing cruises. Yeah, we had some amazing cruises. And then we had that's where we went and bought that watch, that Breitling that he got with 10 carats of like flawless time.
He still has it.
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
That's where the watch started.
Yeah, yes. That's the kind of like, that's kind of when it started. But yeah, that watch got stolen. Oh yeah, it was bad. You could ask him about it. But and then he ended up and we'd go on trips all the time, and it was fun. And then he eventually asked me to help him with his contract because his Weider contract ended. And then that's when I found the BSN deal. And then I got him the BSN deal. And then I got you the BSN deal.
Yes. Could have been.
Could have been, but that didn't work out because of...
I literally was just chatting with Chris about that yesterday.
Oh, really?
Because he was here for a photo shoot. PSN.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was,
okay. Yeah.
Well, it never happened.
What could have happened?
It could have been. Yeah, I would have had you and Ronnie in the same team. That would have been...
Dream team.
Yeah, that would have been a dream team. But yeah, so I was like kind of the enemy camp is what you called it, remember?
Yeah.
I was kind of the
I
enemy
think
camp.
because, at that time it was like I was trying to defeat this guy and, he would slip and then he'd come back better.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like, we were just talking about that yesterday on, we'll get into that about the Olympia a little bit, but like we talk about the champions about being on point all the time. But, Ronnie Coleman did everything right.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to witness a lot of this behind the scenes. Like being friends with someone is a lot different from just being an associate and being around it. So to watch someone train, to watch someone eat, and now knowing what you know today, I mean, he's just off the textbook.
Yeah,
pretty much, right?
I mean, even
because of how hard he trained, do you think, or just genetics, or what do you think?
Both. Number one's genetics. Number one, but genetics is. There's a lot of guys, Flex Wheeler, Kevin Levrone, they all had genetics. Cormier, they all had genetics. And it's the application of a plan and having the drive. And Ronnie came from nothing, right? He came from nothing. And he, in regards to, working at Domino's, throwing newspaper, right? There is so much of that character building that went on, and then eventually getting through college at Grambling, getting a degree in accounting. Right? I think he graduated cum laude, actually.
Yeah.
And because Lonnie told me no way, and then I went and I called and I researched it, and then I called the school, and I actually confirmed it because Lonnie would always call people out about saying...
He loved to point out if they didn't have the education they claim they did.
That's right. And he was the king of that, right? Lonnie Keeper. And so... Then I'm like, nope, here it is. And it says, Ronnie Dean Coleman, cum laude, counting, this is the year, whatever. And he played football also at Grambling. But the crazy thing about it was the fact that he was just so driven. I mean, I think the closest thing to him in terms of hard training is Hany.
Yeah, I want to ask that because you've been around. I mean, you choose characters you work with.
Are they characters or are they eyes?
No,
larger than life.
There's a lot of characteristics to people,
right?
And there's certain personalities,
right?
Probably a better term. You have a lot of choices.
Yeah.
I mean, how many requests do you get? I mean,
a ton.
And you have to kind of determine, okay, I mean, you took on Phil Heath at an early time before anyone believed in him. I mean, you were probably the first one to believe in it. Do you believe he was destined for Mr. Olympia? If I'm going to ask you straight out, give me a yes or no answer. Did you think he could be Mr. Olympia?
Yes and no.
Not a good answer.
Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you. Yeah, yes, but I never was like, he's gonna win. I just think that he could be amazing. But I'm used to you and Ronnie. He had a completely different look, so I thought that maybe there's going to be another you or Ronnie that's going to give him some major problems.
He didn't have much but arms and, shoulders. Really,
that's it. Right?
Not really a back. His legs weren't really there.
No.
But he did have some big arms.
That's right. But that's what I'm saying. But he didn't have the width. He didn't have the density. He didn't train heavy, right?
Because, did he have the mindset, though?
He was coachable, which was the foundation.
I want you to talk about that. Coachable people.
Yes. So what I learned very early on is when people answer, you give them a question, or you give them an answer, or you give them a statement, and they start off with, I know, right? Like you say it sometimes, but you don't, like in the beginning, you said it because you kind of said like, no, I know kind of what's going on. But then you're like, later it became, I know what to do. Thanks for the information. I know, like I got to push myself harder. But there was people that I had worked with that were amateurs and eventually pros that I realized they literally think that they already know. So if you know, then why are you asking me? And that's where I'm like, this is where I cut the bullshit, because I'm like, I don't need to train you. So then I just go, okay, I'm going to, do an off season, and I won't work with you because I just see that you're not executing well and you're not coachable. And that's it. I mean, I had an early relationship with Brandon Curry, and I don't think Brandon at the time was ready for my style of coaching. And then I helped him turn pro.
Train him?
Yeah, I turned him pro. I turned him pro because I was consulting for BSN.
That's right.
I signed him to BSN.
He was the prodigy.
Right. And I signed him to BSN, and then we turned pro. But then, like now you just say he has to go to Kuwait, right? He would go to Kuwait, and he does all these things, and he's got amazing genetics. And I remember when Phil saw him, he goes, dude, that guy's dangerous. You're going to do wonders with the kid. And then he ends up, winning the USAs and getting his pro card and doing all those things. And I did all that because I brought him it was part of the deal with me and BSN. I was consulting for BSN. And then one part of my deal was also I was going to coach their athletes, select athletes. And so we got a pro card, and then he was going to go his pro debut. And I just got so worried that because we decided, it was a hard thing because financially it was hard for him to come to California to train with me. But it was one of those things where I'm just like, look, man, if I'm not going to kind of jive with somebody at that level, I'm just like, look, I think you should get another trainer because I don't want to stress. Because I also, how much I stress, right? I mean, that's a whole different animal. Like I stress so much.
Why do you stress so much?
Because I feel like every single aspect of your life has to be aligned to win. Like your financial has to be aligned so that you don't have to worry about seeing your trainer, flying to your trainer. You don't have to worry.
There's no questions when the task needs to be performed.
Correct. So you need to make sure every detail, the greases, you got to grease the wheels of success. And the way you do that is to take out all the extra variable noise so that you can be able to do that. And I think we did that in 2009.
The box. I talked about the box.
What's the box?
You don't deviate from the box.
Right.
Your boxy lifestyle you close the door for 16 weeks.
Do you notice people that come from a sports background where they had coaches in their life from a young age and learn, then when they come to you, they still apply that?
Yes. So I think there's two types of people in general. You have a coachable person who's been coached because like Phil Heath, he was coached in basketball growing up, right? He talks about his coaches in his documentary. He turned around and was able to apply a game plan. So if you create a game plan, you need to make sure somebody knows how to execute that game plan. But then I don't know Laverone that well, but I know that him and I had a heart-to-heart in Dubai one year before the pandemic. And he said, like, I think you become a kind of a mentor to these guys. And that's where that connection helps.
The trust too.
Yes. And you have to have trust because if you have successes, then people are more likely to trust you. Otherwise, I hate to say this, but most trainers just become an insurance policy for you to blame after the shit doesn't work out.
It's funny because when you said that statement, you have to trust someone. Our conversation was on a personal level. It wasn't like even like we never talked. I think we almost just fell into training because it was like, hey, you okay?
Yeah.
So I trusted the fact that, hey, you know, you were like sincere about reaching out and making sure after I lost.
It was never about training.
Yeah. So like we didn't really talk about that, and you know, it was the question like, Jay, if you're going to quit, how can I walk you through this? I mean, I think I was at that point. So, you know, so we didn't really decide, I don't think, till January, and we started speaking. The show was in September, October, I think, and we had conversations on and off for some time before I actually asked you the question, like, will you train me? But, you know, you reached out as more on a personal level to be like, I think the trust, when you talk about this trust factor, because once again, you don't want to get into bed with someone that's going to just turn around and, you know, these people burn through coaches left and right now. If it doesn't work one show, they're like, okay, on to the next.
Right.
How do you feel about like that situation thing? I mean, do you believe when someone says, I want to work with every coach because I want to take a piece of everyone and try to put it in a combination? Because I feel like bodybuilding is a pretty simple formula.
Mm-hmm.
But you just mentioned it's about the everything in a whole that molds together. It's a puzzle, right?
Right.
So you have all these pieces, and if you're missing a couple of those pieces, it can be disastrous.
I think most people, if they're genuine with their trust, it works both ways, right? You have to be knowledgeable enough to be able to say, like, and sincere enough to not fake it till you make it, especially at the pro upper level. And a lot of people are just, in general, like to fake it till they make it and then just bring on people and tell them what they want to hear, and they'll want to like court people. I do the opposite, right? I talk people out of working with me very early on because I'm like, dude, I'm a ball buster. I'd say, go ask Jay.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, like, he's a mother, like, his hard moments.
Yeah.
But you know what? The truth hurts sometimes. But you're you know what it is? You're abrasive because you're intense and you're driven, and you're like, we know what the end result is. I mean, and someone like me, it's really hard to take a guy that had won the Olympia before. What are my expectations?
Right.
My expectations are like, I need to get this shit back, right?
Right.
And the world is against you, which everyone was against me, I felt like. And you know what? Not one time did you ever tell me you're going to win. Not once. Not once he said that.
It's true. I mean, when you look at it.
And I always
until 5 minutes before he went on stage.
No, he didn't. He didn't tell me.
No.
But it's funny because even with your guys now, like I call you and I'm like, I don't even ask because I know what your answer is going to be. Right. We talked about this. What's his answer going to be?
I forget the exact words.
You know, they'll go.
Some work to do. Yeah, we got some work to do.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we got some work to do.
You'll never answer.
No, because at the end, it's really up to who you're standing next to.
You don't. I say this all the time. So
it's a million variables.
Mean nothing.
Yes,
million variables.
That's right. That's why I don't
finished an unbelievably competitive Olympia.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate saying this because every year it's like, it's the best lineup.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably the
most wide
closest, but it was I felt like the gaps weren't like, it wasn't like, okay, 1, 2, 3, and then
right,
like a whole second.
It was
show.
Definitely narrowed up. Yeah, I agree. I think, look,
like you're not gonna have a guy that you don't ever worry about your clients. These guys, I cheated.
No,
I blew my dial.
No Mel Anthony's, no Kevin English. Kevin English should eat 20. Like, you know, somebody would like slip up and I'd like, dude, I had extra carbs, extra cup of rice, or I had like too much steak, or I had this. Back then, bro, I was like, I've talked to Kevin English and he had 20 candy bars.
Yeah.
20 candy bars. I don't know. Talk to Big Steve.
Yeah.
I know. Like 20 candy bars, like shit like that. And then we'd have to cardio it off of them and do all kinds of crazy. No, but I'm just saying. Like, you know what I'm saying?
We don't. Our viewers or listeners, you can't cardio.
No. I'm just saying we would. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, and that's back when he was 202 going up against, Flex Lewis and that. But I think the situation, when you really look at it, you have to say, number one, like going back to what you said, you kind of went through a lot, right? When you were backstage, I'm in a situation with Phil. I held him back 2 years, told him he can't, don't compete in Olympia, which is like unheard of. Even now, it would be super unheard of if you qualify 2 years and don't do it.
He got a lot of flack, Connie, back then, but it was a magazine. It wasn't Instagram and
right. It was Joe Weider. He was very upset. And he says, why is my athlete that I'm paying to be able to compete in Olympia? And I said, look, my thought processes was, do not be in a rush to get your ass beat. Don't
I'd
go
say
in.
that sometimes to people after I heard.
Were you scared to put him next to me and Ronnie?
Yes. I'm like, no, he's not ready. He's going to get his ass whooped, right? He was only like his pro debut. He was like 212 or 15 pounds or something. Like I'm going to put that next to you.
208 actually.
Something, whatever.
208.
Yeah, maybe it was. I think that was
208.
Yeah, he was like 212. I think 212 or 214 in the beginning of the week, and by the time we dropped his water, I think he was 208, 209 or something like that. And I'm just sitting here going, I'm going to put this next to you. I'm like, no. So he wins. Then we have the whole incident where his food got all screwed up for the next week's show. 2 weeks later, he had the
New York Pro.
Yeah. And then I blew him out for several pounds heavier, a couple pounds. And then he went super 3D. And then he won that show. And then I said, okay, look, but we have to shut it down. We need to put some muscle tissue on this guy. We got to build his back, and we got to put some more muscle on his legs. Then he comes in. He plays 5th at the Arnold. And I said, look, he's still not ready yet. Then that's when I started really focusing on more of the training and started saying, hey, look, I have to get out there a little bit more and focus on being able to really build up his strength. And then that's when I realized he's not going to ever train like a Coleman, because back then everybody was trying to train like Coleman because they're like, he sets the standard, but I'm like, he doesn't have the joints for it. Phil was a basketball player, not a football player. Ronnie was a linebacker. This kid is a basketball player, right? He can't handle 200-pound dumbbells. He's going to tear something. So that's when we started incorporating kind of the FSD7 stuff and said, hey, let's do more volume at a heavy weight, but not super heavy, to try to get him blown out. And so that he goes 3D and seeing what that does. And that's exactly what
Did you just come up with this fascia stretching principle?
I was just going to ask, can you explain what it is exactly? So
the FSD7 training? Yeah, it was a solution for increasing intensity with me not being there. How can I get somebody to increase intensity on a written formula without me being there? When I was there, we'd have good workouts, but how do I increase intensity? Shorten duration.
Did you incorporate it?
Right.
When?
When we were doing it on the weaker body parts.
Okay, so that's one because people used to ask me, do I do it on every body part?
No, it was always on the weaker body parts because it would also tax you. But again, if you're eating, you're resting, and you're able to do it, you'll be able to do it several times a week.
7 sets,
30 seconds of rest was the primary launch of FSD7. It's evolved now where we don't do as much now of just 7s, but we do the principles, right? But what it's really become was a solution to remote training, increasing intensity. Because if I wrote a diet for you and I said, hey, here you go, do this, and I said, here's some exercises, you could end up having the best workout, or you can have a shitty workout depending on how much you push yourself. So what I did was I created a high intensity that has been fused with high volume. So the first 4 exercises was more high intensity style, where it was like 2 working sets, very Dorian, Mike Menser-esque. And then we threw in the high volume. And then the high volume sets, the FSD7 sets, were put in so that you can get the best of both worlds.
Crazy blood flow.
Right, the crazy blood flow. So it was kind of, it was a hybrid system, and then being able to do that. And sometimes we would do it in the beginning of the workouts, and sometimes we would do it at the end of the workouts. So you'd prep like on extensions, leg extensions, we would have you do it on that, or we'd do it on like spider curls and do FSD.
Really helped my arms, imbalances. And, we worked with a lot of imbalances. You had questions you wanted to ask him about 9.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I was going to have you guys talk about how did the 09 come about. I know you spoke about it, but you've never said it in front of Hany. How did it come about? 08, you lose.
He's backstage. I'm with Phil. Phil finally does his third time he qualifies.
I think he could have won.
Yes.
08.
Yes. Do you think he could have won?
Yeah, I said that. I went on record to say that. Do you felt he did? Do you feel like he just... You feel like they held him back maybe? Or?
Yeah, because it was his first one.
Yeah, that's
right. And I think they were feeling him out. And even Jim told me, he goes, he's very close, Hany, and that's his first one. Keep him up there. Like, keep him.
Yeah, so I was devastated. So I lost. Yeah, I was filming the documentary at the time for All Access. If you remember, I had the film backstage, yes. Remember?
That was, by the way, one of the first times I remember hearing about, like, the documentary curse. People that were doing documentaries were not doing... They would do well because you have a camera in front of you. And then that's why I was worried with C-Bone this week.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. But go ahead. You were talking.
Yeah. So I was filming that doc, and it was like, okay, victory number 3.
Yeah.
I lose to a guy that I never, ever thought possible, Dexter Jackson. You know, Ronnie Coleman steps away 2007. You know, I beat him in 6. He finishes in 07. He finishes 4th, which, you know, he was a shadow of himself. So 08, it's a wide open field. Okay, I'm up against these smaller guys. And, you know, Phil, I don't even really think about because he's so new. And, you know, of course you win too. You're pretty much on, you know, Mount Olympus by yourself. You're looking down. And I never thought Dexter Jackson, I never thought he would beat me in that sense, even though he did beat me earlier at the GNC Show of Strength. You remember 03 after the season was over. He beat me at the GNC after my big run in 03. And that's why in the Arnold I came in 04 like a lot leaner. Wasn't my look. So anyway, so I lose the Olympia, backstage devastated. My head's down, contemplating retirement. And, you know, everyone's like different opinion. You can just tell people's demeanors are so different, right? Especially the whole time you could tell like there was going to be a change in the guard. And it's a somber space backstage when it's like that and you're the champ. And, you know, I was beat down. And I mean, I sat at home and I just pondered everything. And, you know, one day the phone rings and it was Hany. And he says, hey man, like, are you all right? And I said, you know, and I was pretty strong. I wasn't necessarily an emotional guy, but I said, you know, I don't know what the direction is. And you know, I was working with Chris Cicito at the time since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, you know, just as a support factor. He just kind of sat on the phone and just listened to me kind of ponder on what I was going to do, right? I don't even know if I even had a decision.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't.
So we were just talking, whatever. I just think we stayed connected, and you know, that kind of how it kind of all started.
At what point did you say, okay, we've had these conversations, we're friends, but
it was, you know what it was? It was like, hey, I'm going to make a run at this thing. And we decided to get up and train. I think we trained for the first time. We trained at a gym in Chatsworth in January for the LA Fit Expo.
Okay.
We were at a gym, and it was Phil and I, and we were there for LA Fit, and we trained together. And it was like, you were like, hey, let's get together and train. I don't think we even made a decision. I said, can I bounce some ideas off you?
That's what it was. You're right. You said you ended up calling me back, and I don't know. Did you ever talk to Phil and get the okay?
Well, Phil sat in a car with me, and like I said, what do you think, or whatever, you know, if is Hany, you know, reliable? And, you know, he asked these questions. I didn't know you as a coach. I knew you as a conversationist, but nothing. We didn't talk about, hey, what are your coaching principles, right? I was like under Cito tutelage my whole life. And it was like, I knew everything too.
Right.
You know, you couldn't tell me any different. I was Mr. Olympia. So I was someone like Hany going to teach me.
Literally.
Yeah. So, and I had that attitude, right? I mean, I was on top of the world, man.
Yeah.
I was, you know, remember you were there.
Top 2 in the world for a decade.
And, you know, I was a big earner at the time and a lot of recognition. I mean, I already had that notoriety. So I think I said, you know, I want to bounce some things off you. And I think I decided at that point, like, I wasn't going to use Chris. It was kind of like, I think we had a conversation, he and I, and he's like, man, I just don't know if like I can do this. Like, I don't know if I have the answer.
Right.
Because we couldn't figure it out. Like, I thought I looked good. And it's like, it was more accountability more that I looked back, and it was just me being complacent. Anything. It was not, once you get it, you just said, you like to blame the coaches. At the time, I think I thought that, but I didn't publicly go out there and blast anyone. I just things weren't clicking. But I think, you know, there's a lot of turmoil in life, right? When you're on top. And that's where I said, hey, let's bounce these ideas. And we started training a little bit. And I don't know if we really even made an announcement, really, did we?
No. So what happened was this. At some point, I called because I was talking to Phil, and we were on cloud 9. He was top 3 in his first show. A lot of people were like, dude, you could have been second. You could have won. You know, I mean, he came in, you know, guns blazing in 08 and just skyrocketed his aura, right? As my son would call it, you know, Cam, his aura points were like 100,000 aura points. And then I saw you backstage, and it was always a rivalry between you and Ronnie. And I was always, you know, Team Coleman. But at that point, I felt really bad for you because you went up against arguably the best bodybuilder in the history of the planet, and now you didn't get your roses. You didn't get the accolades. You didn't get that appreciation. Because one thing that I also kind of started digging into when we started talking was what caused this. You didn't look bad in 08. What caused this, in my opinion, was 07. 07
carryover.
It was a carryover. Okay. So again, how I look at things.
So I lost in 07?
Yes.
Stayed with.
Yeah. And I think that was a carryover. The only way you were going to win in 08 if it was your absolute best. And I think because you weren't.
Yeah, because I looked better in 08 than I did in 07.
You did.
Right?
That's why I'm saying. Because and I went back and I created a blueprint of what happened and what's going on with this, both in regards to the judging and what people are seeing and your persona, as well as your physique, because that was a whole different can of worms. But when I started digging into it, I was like, when did this? He didn't lose the Olympia in 08. He lost it in 07, but the carryover and the result was 08. And so the way I looked at it is I looked at it holistically. And I said, you got to look at this, and there's a series of events that have occurred, and that sets you up for a much deeper, darker struggle than you even imagined. That because you didn't look bad in 08. You just didn't look good enough to handle what you had been given, in my opinion, in 07, the situation. And that's how I looked at it. And I go, this is carryover. So when I saw you backstage and I go, dude, this is a guy that went up against Coleman, right? And you were just kind of broken. And we talked about that on my podcast way back when you came to San Jose a little bit. And I said, this isn't fair. I don't like it. Phil, you guys were really close at the time. And I called him and I said, it's kind of like my heart goes out to Jay, And so I just called you and just said, hey, dude, are you okay? Because I had a feeling you were going to quit. I had a feeling you were done.
I probably would have, I think.
Yeah.
Thinking back now. I was doing well enough, and I think nothing, being supplement owners, I mean, I didn't have a contract that stated I had to be X, right? I had to be Mr. Olympia or whatever else. My value was still there. I was traveling tremendously at that time. But I think for me, I had no confidence. And for the first time ever, I didn't have the confidence that I could bring the package on stage. And I think you were kind of even I don't know if I can do this.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't, that's why it wasn't about that. It was more about just checking in you as a friend, and even though, like I said, you and Coleman were rivalries, and I would go, I'm down in San Diego, and you're like, dude, drive up, let's go have breakfast together. Let's do this. Or you'd call me after the Arnold when you came in a bit lean, and you were like, dude, I didn't really like my package. Yeah. I didn't like that. What'd you think? And I said, dude, you over dieted. You look like you lost too much tissue. That was a close one between you and Cormier, blah, blah, blah. I would give you, because you knew I would never sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
That's just me. But I think that the 08 conversation was just dude, I'm really worried because I feel like you're probably going to quit, and it's not on good terms because you are an amazing bodybuilder. You're one of the best ever, bro.
But I had the arm issue, the leg issue.
Yes.
It was a lot.
It was.
Our back was against the wall for a lot of that stuff. So I think we just started going at it. I mean, you had me doing I was doing everything, dry needling, tissue work.
You had 4 days a week of therapy. I mean, you remember how much money you spent? You're spending almost
6 figures.
Oh,
it was 1,000. It was a few thousand.
Yeah. No, it was more than that. I remember it was at least $4,000 or $5,000 a month when you added everything up. Because I'm sure they gave you deals or something, but it was a lot of money just on there. A lot. Because you get the deep tissues everywhere, everywhere you go.
After the training every day.
Yes. And so, but at the time, I guess you at some point had talked to Phil.
Yeah, we sat in the car, talked for 3 hours, and he convinced me not to quit. We were in California, I think, actually.
And I think,
eating dinner at Ketsu.
And then I think that he also asked him if it was okay for you to reach out to me. Because I asked Phil, I was like, look, dude, you guys are really he just took second.
I think Phil was pretty confident, though, he was going to come and take the title at that point.
No, I think that Phil his heart is so big that he wanted to help his friend. He didn't like to see you like I didn't.
Well, he watched me get shit on too.
We're also both fans of yours.
Yeah.
We were fans of yours. Like, we were like, dude, this is Jay, right? This was like, we didn't want to see you that way. I mean, he cared about you so much that he helped you win the 2009 Olympia by giving me the green light to work with you.
Yeah.
That's what Phil did for you. Because if he would have said, dude, I'm not comfortable with it, Phil's my guy, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it. But he was, I was like, hey, are you sure? And he's like, absolutely. Just do what you do. Or like bring.
Fast forward, Phil got sick.
Yeah.
We trained together. We did shot FST, the first version.
Yeah.
Original DVD. DVDs, guys, this was early.
So. Say, do they know what they are?
Yeah.
They're younger.
But DVDs were...
Think of Xbox games, bro. The Xbox games, you got to bring them dessert relatable.
In there,
though? So we were doing a lot of filming, a lot of magazine publicity. And when they announced it, I still think people thought he's finished.
Yeah. Remember the guys at Muscle Time? They didn't even have you in the top 5 in predictions for 2009. They didn't even have you in the top 5. And then it was more about, again, going back into the beginning of that prep, was like, you said, hey, look, I'm coming out. And I had surgery. Now I remember, I had surgery. I postponed it. I was supposed to have surgery on my knee that I tore years before, 10 years before. I tore my ACL that made me stop competing because I never got it fixed. And I was going to fix it that week. It was a week after my birthday. It was the first week of January. Right. And he says, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm going to have surgery. He's like, well, I want to come out and train with you. And I was like, okay, in San Jose? And he goes, yeah, I want to come out and train with you. I was like, all right. I, turned around and said, okay, I'm going to cancel my surgery. I canceled it. I postponed it 3 more years. And, I was like, I canceled my ACL surgery. He came out, we trained arms, and it was like he almost threw up doing arms.
That was a hard trainer. It's different, when you change your different styles.
And you saw Koji Murafushi and those guys from he's in charge of the Olympic Committee for Japan now. Yeah, he's in charge of the Olympic Committee for Japan.
So when you started working with Jay, at what point, as you're learning him and going through the process, did you go, holy shit, like he...
So this is what happened. It was like deconstructing Jay and saying, okay, what do you do for training? And then that's when I found out Chris wasn't writing his training programs. He would just go in there and do his own.
My own thing.
Right. I didn't know that because I'm, always thinking, hey, like everyone does what I do. And I realized that's not the case. So then I said, okay, what are you doing for supplements? And he's like, well, I'll take some glutamine, creatine, whatever, like some basic shit, right? And I was like, okay, no, we're going to have to like fix that. Then I said, what do you do with your food? And he goes, well, sometimes I'll do fish, sometimes I'll do more steak, and sometimes I'm doing this. And so what I did was I said, okay, let's start with food. The food, I want you to be able to do higher density carbs. I want you to change to grits. And that's when we started.
First time ever using grits.
Yeah. And I said,
oatmeal
and Phil always used grits.
Phil would use grits. Ronnie would use grits. A lot of guys would use grits because the oatmeal, it's faster and then it's not as dense. So what happens is, when I should say dense, is it doesn't have as much fiber. So you can be able to absorb higher amounts of carbohydrates. So I switched it over there. And then, to switch it.
Went to 7 meals. I was on 6 meals.
Yes. And less shakes. We did less shakes. And we did more solid meals. And then I started seeing his body change. And then we started adding more food. And then I'm like, no, your body can absorb higher amounts of food. And his metabolism just started ripping. And then we just started getting growing and growing. And then on the weights, I introduced him to the FSC7 method. And I said, these are the exercises. These are the ways I want you to be able to do it, because you got to work on your arms. And then, like he said, we worked on all the therapy. Right, the right leg was always a problem, especially at the end. And then what we did was we worked on being able to make sure that he had so much, like, just house air, like the noise, right? Like I would talk to him and he's just like, it was like a little bit of therapy, right? It was one of those things, just being able to say, hey, look, what do we need to do to create less chaos, to be able to get to where we need to go? Because that's what I did with Phil. That's what I did with all my top guys, because I would just say, hey, look, because again, I didn't have that many clients, so I could do that, right? Where some people have 30, 50, 100 clients, and I would have like 5, right?
So you could give like a ton of attention.
I could sit there and we can talk for 2 hours about some given whatever's going on with the workout, and then also what's going on with life, and then but mostly he'd like talked about business too. He's like, hey man, who's that? It's like, I'm making any money over there? bro.
Are they broke too?
Yeah, exactly.
Pacific West Injury Law. Injured? Call 602-HURT. Car accident? Call 602-HURT. Our firm is dedicated to you and your recovery.
But so when you look at it all, that January happened, February we're going into it, March we're kind of building this little dream team, me, Jay, Phil, right, with the three of us, and then they're meshing, like pushing each other higher, elevating each other because they're friends, but they're also the positive energy was really, really good. We'd go out, we'd eat together, we'd train together, take them out to Persian food, we'd go Persian food and do that after workouts because it was awesome, good dense calories, but clean still. And then what we would do is, as we were getting closer, it wasn't about, that was just training at the time. We hadn't made a decision. Jay hadn't made a decision. He hadn't asked me and I didn't commit to anything yet. And what was happening is we were getting closer to the USA. And then
which is July.
Okay. And then everyone's asking me, are you going to prep Jay? Because now that was just supposed to be an off season. And I was supposed to just help him with his off season when it came to everything that had to do with competing. But he was going to decide what he wanted to do. And I just told him, you decide what you want to do and let me know. And then I remember it was here in Vegas. We were and you came to the Embassy Suites and we came over and you're like, I think I want you to prep me.
Yeah, it's when they had the check-ins.
Yes. The Embassy Suites right there, right across from the Hard Rock. Yeah. And you came up and you pulled up front and you're like, because again, he was kind of like,
this is the end of July, so I need to make a decision.
That's already 2 months.
No,
September wasn't.
But I'm already kind of
end of September.
I've already started to clean it up and whatever else,
right. Yeah. It was already, I mean, it was already right to that point. We were still
in 10 or 12 weeks.
12 weeks out. Yeah, something like that. But we were like, and we'd done everything to that point.
Yeah.
But it was like, who's going to be able to take over the reins for the last 12 weeks? Are you going to do it yourself? Are you going to go back to crit? Whatever you're going to do. And then he thought about it, and then he came to me then, and he's like, I want to talk to you. And he's like, I want you to prep me.
What is your mindset when this happens?
Well, then there's pressure, right? Then I'm like, okay, it's okay. But I've already kind of gone through this thinking that it might happen. So I was already preparing to be able to say, okay, if I have to do this. And then I reconfirmed with Phil again, said, hey, look, dude, it looks like, we're going to do that. And at that point, he was just like, yeah, you just bring Jay in his best and you bring me in at my best and you let the judges sort out the rest. And that's exactly to this point, whether it's Hany and Derek or whether it was Jay and Phil, that's what it was all about. So what ended up happening at that point was that it was really about giving them the game plan and who can execute on it. And that was the year that Phil ended up getting sick, right? Yes. And so it was, but even when that happened, Jay, he was cruising when we got to peak week and we were here, and remember we were staying at the Residence Inn, and you came over and we took the photos and you're like, who's that?
Yeah. Tell the story.
So this guy comes over, he's like, I was like,
this is the day, this is prejudging, this is Friday. Was it on a Friday then?
Yeah, it was Friday.
And I went straight from there to the venue.
So he lives 30 minutes away, and and I'm staying. Phil and I are staying
by the convention center, across the street,
right across the street, the Residence. Yeah, and so Phil and I are sitting right next to each other. His house is 30 minutes away, and so I was going back and forth all week.
Total pain
in the ass to his house. I mean, I was coming over at 11 o'clock at night, and then what ended up happening was it Dave Burley who was taking the photos of you for me, and then or was it Carrie that was at your pool, and you were sending Carrie was sending the photos, and so he during the day when I'd have to go back and forth, or I'd come back at night, or first thing in the morning I'd go, and then in the middle of the day after like 3 or 4 meals, she was taking the photos and then she was sending him as we're drying out and filling up.
But he wouldn't see them; they would just come to you.
No, he saw what he looked like. Okay. He saw what he looked like. But these are those ones by the pool. These photos of the pool. You should dig those up. Those are the ones at the pool. yeah. And then all of a sudden he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm feeling this. Like it's coming together, right?" And then what I would do is get the cues. I'm like, dude, you know your body. You are Mr. Olympia. Like, I don't know the whole formula. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to connect the dots to try to get you as full as possible, but we're going to have to get you as dry as possible.
Which is difficult for me.
Right.
The water depletion's crazy for me.
Yeah, because you almost died a couple of times, right? So, yeah, is that the one where you're like passed out or something?
The infection.
2010, I was pretty dehydrated too.
But yeah, but not nearly like, I mean, you were down, but you weren't like crazy. But that.
Yeah, so, I mean, he called me and went down there. It was for Friday preach.
I said, come in, take a look.
Baroness took a picture.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. I said, who's that?
Yeah, you look at the picture and he says, who's that? It's you.
Because I had crazy striated ass.
Yeah, his glutes and his hamstrings were just corded.
At that point, did you have a strong feeling?
She said, holy shit. No. That's what his wife.
You didn't know until.
No, so this is the deal. Like, this is the first time working with Jay. It's the first time like his body. And at first he was a bit worried because he's like, dude, my weight's really coming down. You know, this is going to be one of the lightest I've ever been. Yeah. And I said, look, I'm not going off of your scale. I'm glad you're telling me the number, but I got to go by what I'm looking at because nobody weighs you in, right? It's going to be how you look. So we ended up going into the last 2 days. And as we started, keeping him full, like, again, we were hammering food. The Hany
What type of amounts?
A lot.
A lot. He's doing like 100
carbs. Yeah, a lot of carbs to the point where I just couldn't eat. You get dehydrated and you have trouble eating.
Yeah.
So.
But I need to keep his fullness. So I'm like, you got to stay eating. So we just were hammering food, and it was keeping his fullness because he was like, we cut the water, and he told me, he goes, dude, I got to warn you. Every time you think that I'm dry enough, I'm not. I need to be dry here, here, here. This is what's going to happen to my leg. This is where, when I'm in shape, the striations in the middle of my quad are going to really split. And so he's giving me the cues because I have never driven this track before, right? So I'm sitting there, okay, let me take these cues down, and then let me make sure I don't have, the fog of I call it the fog of war, right? You don't know, you're like, oh, I think he's full enough. And he's like, no, he needs to be fuller because as he's dehydrating and getting dry to get that crazy crisp look, he needs to make sure that he still keeps that roundness in his chest. And so when we came through and started taking the photos and he just came in really quick, and he was very considerate because he knew what happened. I was giving him updates about Phil the night before. And I ended up having to give Phil McDonald's because I had to get electrolytes back in him because he was throwing up and he just was like going sideways.
Backstage.
Yeah, he was backstage and I was giving him McDonald's to fill back up. And what happened was Jay was just like, dude, I'm in a good spot. You just take care of Phil. And I said, just let me know. And then I went backstage to go look at her, and they were hanging out backstage in 2009 and 2010 together. And I was like, okay, you're a little flat. Come over here in this light. Let me look at you. Okay, here, I want you to drink this. Remember? I mixed some stuff up for you. I can't talk about exactly what was in it, but it was like, and I said,
the Hany special?
Yeah, no, the Hany special is
Let's say you get a product just says Hany special.
Yeah, that's going to be, maybe we're going to do that. Remember that? And then he comes back out, and I just remember Gary Udit's like, what did you do? He could he's like 10 minutes.
So when Jay in 09 walks out, what do you talk about what you saw, just you being a fan?
Well, right before we went out, Dan Solomon comes over.
Hamer and Tarek too. We're fans backstage.
Yeah. And they were backstage, and then Dan and...
Yeah, Dan was a media guy.
Yes.
They were all just back there like, oh my gosh,
No. What happened was...
Tyler Mannion was there for the first time ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was
15. Tyler was a kid. And he...
Not much older than Cameron.
Yeah, he brought all his friends with him, and they were sitting in the front row, and he's, like, to this day, he still talks about the 09 Olympia like the best Olympia ever to watch me come back and win the title.
Yeah. Well, it was pretty electric because what happened was Dan's like, how's he looking? And I was like, oh, he's right there. And remember, we're in the hallway, and then he comes over and he drops and he just, hits an ab shot and is the most muscular. And she's like, yeah, but how's his back look? Yeah, how's his, because, he would look at like one person from the front and then a whole different person from behind. And then he turned around and he just gives a tree and he goes, holy shit. He goes, that's what Dan, he just looks over and he's like, I've never seen that before. And I was like, all right. And he was building his confidence backstage and he was just kind of building it up. And I kept telling him, I said, look, man, go out there. And I can't remember, how did we come up with a foot stomp? we were like talking about like your posing or something, and you were just playing with it.
Yeah.
And you were like, dude, there was just so much. Yeah. Yeah. And then the hair. That was the year of the hair too. And everybody for years after that at all the shows had your hair. Yeah. Yeah. And it was like, and then like people were like, the press conference was death face. Remember? That was like they coined the term right there. It was like face was just.
That's when that's won it back, man.
Yeah.
It's pretty,
So now I'm going to ask you this because I anteceded this. 01J, 09J.
Look,
compare the two.
I was at both shows. Okay. 01J was kind of like was your, wow, I'm going to actually rock the world. Nobody expects you to look like that because you had just made a very profound statement. Ronnie was off and you were on. And it was a battle, and all of a sudden it was like, holy shit. But he was 8 years younger in 01. In 2009, I felt it was a whole different look. It was roundness that he had never had, right? In 01, he was dry. In 2009, he was round.
Like old man muscle.
Old man muscle, but more 3D, right? He like, it was like everybody's goal is to be bursting at the seams on his show because you always run a bit flat. You never get to that point. And I think we got him to that point, kind of like Phil did in 13, where he got the one call out and everything else like that. It was like, super, super full.
I still think 11 was his bet. We talked about that.
Yeah, the most complete and his best, I believe.
But
so
you
too.
thought his legs weren't big enough and whatever in 11, right?
Yes.
That's another question I have down the road.
Yeah.
Later on in this.
But yeah, so I think that what it boils down to is the fact that I feel like the 09 had just much more presence to it. And the pictures you see there are the ones that are most iconic.
Iconic, yeah.
In the history of the sport. Like, I don't think that there's one more iconic picture, stage shot at least, of a bodybuilder than a foot stomp.
Yeah. I would say the same thing. Yeah. I mean, if that quad stomp was never born, it'd be like Ronnie Coleman without Yeah Buddy or Lightweight.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. I think so. I think I think that you could have went to, head to head with almost anybody at that look, at any era with that look, because it was such a dominant power. Dude, he's so wide, right? He's so wide and he's so round. Like if you watch the videos of, how many million videos of Machiavelli Motivation or whoever have made of you walking up on that stage, and then everyone's like, holy.
You could see too your face when you walk out, you knew it. Like the confidence.
Yeah, because when you walk out and you're full in the pecs and shoulders, and it's like,
yeah,
looking at me now, it's like you never imagine. It's like unless you knew me back then. The shoulder width. It's, we'd always talk about how big Rami was, but it's for some reason I always thought like people talk about my width being like not even comparable really to anyone,
right?
Because I was just so wide in the shoulders, the delts and everything. So it's really hard to beat someone like that. It doesn't matter how wide my waist was, and I had quads, right?
But it made your waist look smaller.
Yeah, I had a great abs for my build.
And your quads were back.
Yeah.
So they were much fuller, and that's why they were so striated because of the fullness and everything else. So it really completed the look. So,
and he told me after the show, I said, what about next year? And we literally laughed, and he said, you're never going to get this. This is
once in a lifetime.
I said,
we knew it, and it sucked because we literally talked about that. And I said, okay, if you come back next year, like to get this, it's almost going to be impossible. Yeah. And no matter what, I got complacent. You win it back. I was always better chasing, being the underdog. When I was talked about as like after you come in 09 and you wipe the floor with everyone. Like, who do you, like, you just saw he's going to win. It's like the C-bomb effect of what goes on. And, of course, as a coach and in his corner, you're not thinking that because you can't think like that.
Right.
You got to stay hungry for them.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about. It's about doing that. And,
Phil Heath went through that. I mean, who thought anyone would beat Phil Heath?
Right.
You probably went every show like, man, no, you got to look better.
100%. I was never happy. I think I was happy with Phil, and it was like 3 looks.
That was one of the other questions I have. Obviously, you're with Phil from day one to the end.
Right.
what do you think his best look, in your opinion, you as a coach, what do you think the one where you said, that's the one?
2011 Olympia. Then 2000, close second would be 2013. 2013 was more of a dominating look.
Yeah, that round
cartoon. That's where
You got one call out.
You got one call out, and then back in line. I even think that he had an amazing look when he lost to Kai and Arnold in 2010.
He did.
I was just going to say 2010 he looked.
And he was ahead on
near as good.
So I don't understand that one either.
He was ahead, and then 4 hours later, he ended up losing the show. And it was just like, and nothing slipped in 4 or 5 hours.
I congratulated him.
I know you did. And that's what I said. Don't ever congratulate anybody ever again like that, because you, like, it was a curse. Because you texted me and you said, congratulations on having the Olympia champ, because he had just won the 09 Olympia. Yeah. And then he said, and the Arnold champ. And I said, it's not over yet. And then all of a sudden he took second, and Kai ended up winning. And I was just like, okay.
So last year it came to fruition, though, Derek and Hany.
What do you mean in regards to what?
You had the Olympia and then the Arnold.
Yeah.
After.
Yeah. That finally came to fruition. And, you know, I think that when you look at it back then, it was just an era of, like, so many people had really counted you out, that it was, to this day, I've had 24 plus 1, 25 wins, but nobody was as thankful as you. Nobody had gone so far out of the way. You texted me literally every 15 minutes saying thank you after the show, because you were so appreciative, and it meant a lot to me. It still does. And it's one of those things that was a highlight, because I really wanted to just see you happy again. And when you said, you know,
I wouldn't have won it back, you know, I wouldn't have won it back because I was against all odds. I mean, if I never got to work with you, I don't think I probably would have quit and I walked away. That's hard. I mean, to go out like that, tough.
Well, what was also hard was the fact that you had the Jay fans, and then you had Ronnie fans, and people liked you that really liked you, and then the people that liked Ronnie didn't like you, to a point where the 7 happened, the 8 happened, 07, 08, and then, but what was cool about 09 was that everybody loved you in 09, because it was a comeback story. It was Rocky. And
Ronnie fans became Jay fans.
That's right. And everybody became a Jay fan that day. Everybody. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. It was like a straight movie, because I just sat back and there wasn't, everybody was just in awe. And when he turned around, and then it was just like a million flashes going off, and people looked at me and they're like, I'm in the audience, right? And I'm in the audience with Fairness, and they're like, that's crazy.
I mean, a lot of memorable Olympias for you.
Yeah.
I mean, are there any that really sit in your mind?
That one is one. Again,
that was your first open
win. That one, but it was double-edged too, because I still had I felt bad for Phil, because I wanted Phil to try to be up there with you, and because of the, you know, him getting sick and whatnot, that didn't happen. But then I just got
retired in 2010, right?
Look, it would have been a very more C-Bum-esque if you would have, because it would have been absolutely at the top, and it would have been the mic drop. But I think you got a little bit of just, wow, I'm really feeling the momentum. I've never had everybody, like, straight firsts, and everybody loves me, you know, because when he beat Ronnie, it was more of a Ronnie lost, Jay didn't win. He was just starting to peter out, and you just outlasted him. But this was the moment, there was a defining moment that was like, holy shit, Jay is literally, like, on.
Yeah, but how does that compare to, like, when you get to top 2 guys, like you just had the last couple of years?
It's a big difference, because that was, number one, that was the beginning, and then also the closeness with Phil in 2010, again, that could have been either way too, right? I mean, do you agree or no?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and that could have went either way. So if Phil would have won that, then he would have won 8, not including whatever happened with Sean Roden. And I think that when you look at it in its entirety, you have to think about you and him. And then I was like, okay, are we done? And you're like, one more. And I'm like, bro.
I wanted 5.
I wanted 5. That was the problem.
You had the mantle.
Oh.
Yeah, remember I made all the things.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I already had the box on the wall ready for the medals.
Got it. Yeah, I forgot about that, actually. I forgot about the mantle. Now that you mentioned it, I remember. You're like, I got to fill the mantle.
Had that gold box, and it was empty. You remember that was, it's a silver, right?
Yeah.
So that was empty. And I had the mantle, one of these, I stubbed a pedestal that was ready.
Now it's got like the NOC ring and something else on it.
No, it's got, I think I moved it to the back to Angie's trophies, actually.
But yeah, I think that ultimately that's kind of how it was. And then you had the bicep tear in 11, and that didn't help anything. You know, I mean,
which we didn't even know what it was. You didn't know what it was.
No, you didn't tell me. Remember, you're like, you didn't send me that last set of pictures because you didn't want me to freak out.
Yeah.
And then I saw it when I come to your the Mandarin Oriental that I had to talk about the living situation. I mean, that whole thing was chaos, bro.
Yeah, going through the divorce. And
do you regret going through that? Do you think that it would have changed a bit of the outcome?
Well, listen, leading up, I still send you the pictures once in a while when I'm feeling like reminiscing about my bodybuilding career.
Yeah.
And had some crazy pictures at the LVAC on Sahara, which you took all the guys.
Yeah.
Right there in that, like the racquetball right there. I used to take the pictures.
Right.
And, man, I looked incredible leading up. It's just, once I got the bicep, it was...
Your body was just
just resisted everything. And,
yep.
But yeah, I think definitely, you know, my relationship with Kerry started having issues, you know, 09, 10, after 09 and into 10. And then I remember, you know, in June of 11 is when, like, we separated. I moved to the hotel, and you move out of that groove. I mean, you know, you just talk about that structure and having everything in line, and all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I have chaos.
Yeah.
And chaos doesn't work well for a fitness show.
No, not at the level that we're at.
Yeah, so for me, it was, yes, I think there's a lot of factors. You know, I just had a lot of disruptions.
If you could have...
I had a great crew in 09. I have to give credit to the...
You did.
Like, I had a good training people. You know, we were taking the pictures steady. We were filming. We were doing all the things that we needed to do. And I felt like I was just hungry. I wasn't as hungry in 2010 because I was still riding that. And I think really in the back of my mind, subconsciously, you realize I'm not going to be as good as 09.
Yeah.
I hate to say it because that's a terrible thing to put out there, but we both talked about it. Let's be real about it.
Yeah.
Can we duplicate this? And you said no. You were honest.
I was.
And I don't know. And it
was kind of brutally honest, but I told him to say proud.
I'm 37 at this point.
Yes.
He knows how hard I worked, and he sees now off season, and you can see the slip, right? The guest postings are through the roof.
Right.
The financial reward is, I mean, it's more than ever.
Yep.
And I was chasing a movie. I don't know if you remember, I had the Hercules film at the time that I had the script, which The Rock ended up doing that actual movie.
Yeah.
So I met with Stan Lee, and, you know, he talked about building a whole character around me and all that. So there was a lot of hype, and I was going through marital issues.
Right.
So I didn't have that person that was like, I mean, that's my biggest anchor, right?
Right. That's your spine. That's your foundation.
Yeah.
That's your rock.
So, you know, anyone listening to that, like structure, I talk about it all the time. You were around it too. And when you have yes men all around you, like cheering you on with a bunch of cheerleaders, but you don't have a critic, and you're only going to step in and say so much, right? Because it's not crunch time yet. But when it came to crunch time,
well, because it wasn't because it was.
I was training in California, if you remember, for the 2010.
Yes.
On and off. I was in Cali. I had my place there.
Yep. Yeah, because you were trying to take advantage of the business.
Yeah.
Because you're such a business-oriented guy that you said, look, dude, I got to make my money, and I got to see what I'm going to be doing and setting myself up for the future. So, and I understood that, but at the same time, it wasn't the way that I would do it, but you needed to do the way you needed to do it because you were trying to make sure that you're making the maximum amount of money from it because you were riding such a huge wave from 09. Magazine covers, I mean, everybody loved you.
Yeah.
And so when you put all of that formula together, it was you were always great at chasing.
Better, right?
Much better. You're much, much better at chasing. I mean, you only became as good as you were because of Coleman.
That's why they said, you'd have 10.
Yeah.
Probably not.
No.
Because if there was no Ronnie Coleman, how would we be, right?
Right. Because you wouldn't have been able to push yourself that far. But I think that's why that second year it was a little bit of a back off, was because of you were trying to pick as much fruit from the tree as possible.
Which makes sense. Do you blame me?
No. That's why I wasn't like screaming at you.
And honestly, Hany, I never thought that my earning potential would continue. That's the biggest fear of a bodybuilder is, what am I going to do after? Even though I felt like, hey, I have other things going on, I felt like, man, this kind of revenue is next level.
Right. Because it was the most amount of money you've ever raised right after that.
Yeah.
Because it brought you back, and then you got your fan base tripled, right? I mean, it literally tripled right after your win. And, 07 was not, people weren't very happy with that look. 08, you lost, and then it was kind of like, okay, and then now all of a sudden everything from your highest point just triples. That's why I didn't sit there and go, like, I understand when you said I'm going to go do this or this, I understand. I would always tell you, but you got to remember what got you here. It's that, and I said, it's so hard to even be able to replicate what we did.
Yes.
And then if you're at 95%, at 100%, it's hard to replicate it. At 95%, it's going to be even tougher. And that's why
imagine in today's day that 15 years ago, that show is still, these young kids that weren't even born talk about it.
Yeah.
Quad Stomp, still 15 years later. Of all the bodybuilding that's happened in between, when we go places, people still come up, kids. It's because, like, how do you know this?
It's because of the iconic nature of it. It's because of the videos that were made. I mean, I've seen ones that are like 10 million views, 5 million views.
How important is the content piece?
Super. I think it's everything is content. Back then, the content was just, we would make our own content and sell it, right? It was the DVDs. I would produce it and then, give them to you, give them to Phil.
Still have some in the back. I still sell them.
And we would do that, right? And then we would go to the trade shows, and you guys would sell your pictures and your T-shirts and whatever else. It was like a fucking Persian flea market, If a Coleman would have like 30 of them, and I go, "Why do you have
VHS?"
What's that?
He still sells VHS.
He does?
Yeah.
VHS, wow.
Yeah.
But
I almost kind of want one just to have it on the shelf.
Well, it made sense because the reason why you had so many pictures is because people would keep coming. And then they were like, I got this one, but I don't have number 7, and I don't have number 14. Give me that one and that one, right? And then he would walk away selling a ton of merch.
So I want to change gears a little bit and talk about Hany.
Okay.
And how difficult, I know you can't go into super depth, how difficult is it to get him here? So the fan, they really understand. You can't just go, hey, Hany, come here.
Right. It is very difficult because we have to go through a whole new process every single time. Just like right now, it starts all over again. The minute he leaves the United States, we have to start the whole visa process over again from zero. Fill out all the forms again, get all the background checks done again. Everything starts over again from the minute he leaves. And if they also need a certain amount of time, I can't just do it like last year. I was trying to do the Arnold right after the Olympia. And they're like, no, you just need to come back in a couple months. And I'm like, wait a minute, then we might run out of time. And they're like, well, we just can't do it. He just had a visa. We have to start this all over again. And you need to give it enough time. And I'm like, I still didn't make sense to me. But I'm like, okay, what do we do? Because I went to Dubai and I was like, let me do it while I'm there. And they're like, no, we'll get back to you. Go ahead and reapply in a couple months. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But he's in the, obviously there's time. I mean, Nick Irby, my right-hand man, Eugene man, I mean, like Hany wouldn't have a visa if it wasn't for Nick. Nick is literally the man. Like the amount of time and effort he helps do everything when it comes to the paperwork and everything else, and my team and the countless hours. I mean, look how hard it is with Milos and his athletes and all of these things. It's super difficult, right? And some people, it also depends on their background. Like, what did they do? What were they not supposed to do? Is there something that's a dark mark on their file? You don't know. But luckily, Hany comes and goes. He does his thing, and he just, very professional, comes and leaves. and he has a history of that. So therefore they know that he's going to he's going to go back and he's going to, go back to his family.
You as a coach, you even now, when you start prepping him, like there's still a chance that
he may not be able to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Every single time. I mean, this last time it was so bad that he was jammed up in Dubai for so long. I said, go back to Iran. Dubai's.
How many weeks out was this?
This was like at 8 weeks out. I was like, just go back. You can't, like, it's super expensive in Dubai. We don't know when we're going to hear back. And he was already there for like 2 weeks. And I said, just whatever it was, I said, just go back. Go back until we can figure out when you get closer. And then if we get the green light, then you can come back and grab your visa.
What changed?
They finally got it processed. And again, like when you go on your thing, you'll say that your appointment's for 2 years from now. And then you have to pay for expedition. And then you have to turn around and be able to prove that this is a,
It doesn't help that he's could come every single year now.
It does help, but it doesn't mean that
still going to do it.
I mean,
he
was the greatest in the world at what he did.
It doesn't matter. They got to go through the
There's a way that some way the bodybuilding world can come together and figure out a way for these guys.
I don't know, man. It's just.
But this is all you. It's not up to the promoters or anything like
nothing.
that.
No, the promoters provide documentation that they're invited because of their qualifications, because they're worthy. But that's all they can do. Like, I mean, even when we had to do the Arnold in the UK, like, Brian and all those guys were like, hey, we'll get the visa. And then they're like, their guys are like, oh, wait a minute.
I remember.
He's Iranian? Oh, he's Iranian? Well, no, you got to get the guys. And I had to do it last minute. And then last minute, we almost didn't even make it.
I remember you said you were waiting and someone drove the visa right at the airport and you guys landed.
That's it.
Right? We're at the athletes meeting and Hany and Hady walk in. He's like, we just came here right from the airport. We dropped off our bags and said we went straight to the thing because we just caught the last possible flight from Dallas to London and then got a car service to take us up to Birmingham. And it was the last one. And I had somebody, Dylan, who really good kid. He ended up staying in Houston. We flew back to Dallas because we had all of our stuff there. And we couldn't fly out of Houston, but that's where the visas were being delivered because they actually deliver them from the UK. They actually get the okay, give it to New Jersey where their field office is. Then it gets FedExed to Houston. Then I had it driven 4 hours from Houston to Dallas, and then I straight to the airport. Our flight's an hour and a half, and he came over and we were like out in front of the house with our bags packed, and and that was starting on Monday. We had a flight. And then we had to keep pushing it back every day until the last possible day, which was like Thursday or whatever it was. And it was just
stress.
Oh, insane stress. Imagine how much more stress versus sitting at home and just saying, okay, when's my next meal? And when do I need to go to the gym? We're like, am I not going to compete this time? It's an insane amount of stress that he has to go through for that. So, I mean, it's like Argo. Like the amount of stress, it's like it could be a movie. Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
It bothers him so much. We talk about this very often because he deals with athletes and international.
Yeah.
And they just think, even like Brazil, like I think Good Vito couldn't compete in something.
It's just one of those things where just because you're born in between an invisible line, you can't go somewhere when you earned it. And bodybuilding is the one sport or whatever you want to call it in the world where they don't care where you're from, they don't care what language you speak, they judge you from here down.
Right.
And the rest of the world and the rest of the sporting world should take something from that. And here we have literally one of the best of all time, and the shit he has to go through to get here is ridiculous.
Yeah, and
he should be able to represent his country, period.
I agree. I think that there is hopefully a solution, but it doesn't help when there's geopolitical issues right now.
Of course.
Right? I mean,
that was the question of this weekend, to be honest. People are like, I wonder, people think that.
Yeah.
How do you win this show?
If something happens on the road, they might say, nope, period, done. And it's like, it's not fair to him.
Well,
he's not making these decisions.
It's not even just that he's not making the decisions, but like even travel. Like I don't know, there might have been a person that didn't come because of that. I don't remember if I heard that he ended up making it, but you have a lot of really good Iranian and Middle Eastern athletes, right? I mean, like the kid from Afghanistan that plays second from in men's physique, Bilal, the kid was great. And, I mean, luckily he has, the right passport, but just because, like you said, this invisible line of where you live now all of a sudden can hinder you. And there's a lot of really amazing Persian athletes
We've never heard.
in Iran, that you're not going to see until some of these things happen. And it's not getting better. It's getting worse because of the geopolitical situation, unfortunately.
At the Dubai Muscle Show, you see these guys come out and you're like,
yeah,
in different divisions, and we'd never hear of them.
Right.
Bullshit.
And the shows are huge. When they have them inside of Iran, 1,000 competitors. And you got to remember, there's no 1,500 competitors with no women, because women are not allowed to compete there. So you're talking about like a state show or their national show where you got 1,500, 2,000.
Hany has brought a lot of attention to the sport of bodybuilding, and people don't realize that.
I'm very vocal about that. And I know people say, he's Iranian, can't speak English, he's deaf. What is he doing for the sport? I guarantee you there's more people competing now from that part of the world than ever before. And it's because they saw him get to the highest level, and now they go, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And that's not diminishing any of the other guys that are competing now,
no.
But I think they don't pay attention to how much he really pushes in that part of the world. Like you said, you can have a show with 1,500 people there.
Yeah.
You don't have shows at 1,500 here. And that's just that part of the world. So I think sometimes people take for granted the guys that might not speak the language from another part of the world. They are just as important as the main people that are here.
Yeah, well, and let's clarify this. The reason why Hany doesn't learn English is not because he doesn't want to learn English. It's because he can't hear what the words are supposed to sound like because of his hearing situation. And I feel like what it really boils down to is the fact that he was telling, we were in the gym and he says, fire, fire. And I'm like, fire what? What are you even saying? And he was literally saying a completely different word because he doesn't understand how it's supposed to sound because he can't hear himself. I mean, look at how, it's hard to learn a different.
So he lip reads for you, right?
Yes. Yeah. He lip reads and then he'll pick up certain tones in his hearing aids, but his hearing, I think, has gotten considerably worse because Cameron would be behind him and he would be trying to talk to him. And he goes, Dad, he can't hear. And I go, he's deaf, son. I go,
You can hear when Steve announces his name on stage for sure.
Yeah, he can hear certain things for sure. Like, because again, that's why he has to get his hearing aids upgraded all the time and they make him stronger. And it's a genetic thing because I believe one or two of his other brothers have the same problem. And I don't know if they're as bad as his, but it's one of those things. But most of the time he's lip reading and then he tries to, connect the words into like, okay, I know what you're kind of saying. But even when I speak Farsi, like I even got here when I was like 1 or 2 years old. So I don't have any like formal Farsi. It's like everything's conversational that's been translated. So when I speak Farsi, but it's one of those things where everyone's like, well, why doesn't he learn how to speak English? He should. Like, even Big Ramy had a little bit. And I'm like, Big Ramy wasn't deaf. He can't hear his pitch. He doesn't understand how to pronounce the words because it's just, his hearing disability. So I think that, and then during COVID, it was horrible because we had to wear masks in California and then you can't even read lips. That was the worst.
What's out of that?
Yeah. And then that was the year that, his visa got jammed up so much, he came the day before the Olympia in 2020.
I remember you would tell me about that. He was like, he had to go to Turkey and then he had to go back to Dubai and then back to Turkey and then Dubai. And he was in a hotel for 14 days doing push-ups and eating canned tuna. And he got here.
Yeah. He got here.
Still is one of the best in the world.
Yeah. He plays
still.
Phil,
Every time I think of like, I'll hear athletes bitch and complain about how hard they have it. And I remember the stories you tell me. I'm like, yeah, you need to just shut up. Just shut up.
Was the year he won the Olympia his best?
I liked his look his first Olympia. At 19, I liked that look. He was shredded.
So Milo on this podcast and myself, Matt, we talk about no disrespect. Hany probably could have had more
in my eyes. Jay didn't go to that prejudging, and it was the first time Hany was there. And I think I remember texting him and I said, Hany's kicking these guys' ass all over the place. And he's like, I don't know. And then when you saw him the next night, you were like, he's a real deal.
Yeah. And so I think 19 was pretty outstanding. I like the Arnold look because I also think that the lighting was really good those years. And you could really see the best pictures from those years.
Yeah.
And even at the Arnold this year too. The lighting.
I mean, there's a black screen or?
I don't remember.
The Arnold this year?
It was darker behind.
It was darker behind. Yeah. It was definitely a more contrast. And I thought that those photos came out amazing. But I think that like last year's Olympia, it was a bit washed out. Like, the year before that, one year he won, the color was a bit off, but also Is that LED?
Is there a big weight difference between the first Olympia versus like what happened this weekend?
Yeah. He's
Put
definitely
on size.
Yeah, definitely. He's heavier. He's bigger now. When he won in 2022, I mean, he was considerably bigger, and he's still at that weight now, but he's definitely considerably bigger. I mean, when he was lighter, it was just ripped, but it wasn't. I mean, again, even Steve's feedback was like, he looks really good. He's ripped, but he needs to be bigger, and that's where.
Yeah, there's a little talk this weekend. He wasn't as wow factor of side shots.
Yeah, I think there was just a little bit of that tiredness of that fourth show in less than a year, because you remember he hit Olympia and all that. And there's a big difference, guys, between doing multiple shows and being off and getting tighter versus somebody who's peaked already.
Yeah.
Right? When you peak, this is one of the reasons why I didn't put Phil in all these other shows. Right? And it's like, because once you peak, it's not like you're out of shape and then I'm going to go back and do another show and get dialed in even in deeper. Right? Where these big guys, right, they're like doing more shows and they're
Did they ever peak?
With the big guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen it yet. Like, I haven't seen anybody like Andrew Jack or Samson at their absolute, like, holy crap, right? Like, I think that...
Do you think anyone peaked for this Olympia we just witnessed?
I'll be honest with you. I think that it's a different criteria because of the 10 p.m. prejudging. I think
a difference?
1,000,000%. Like, look at how you guys looked at noon when you were doing one-day shows at the Mandalay, right? It's a whole different idea when you have 2 or 3
What's the biggest challenge, though, as someone that's dialing people in?
Mm-hmm.
Is it harder to balance a physique with that many meals?
Yes.
Yes,
that's why none of them look crisp. But, I mean, just think of this. I have Hany and Derek, right, out of my guys, and they're getting on stage at 9:30 p.m. and they're finished by 10 or 9:15 or whatever it is, and they're 6-7 meals deep, right? How is that going to look conditioning-wise? Versus Chris Bumstead after 2 meals in the morning, and he's going at 9:30 a.m. He's getting on stage. And look at all of the guys in Classic, and why are they ripped out of their minds? Because they're pre-judging. But if you put them at night, they ain't going to look like that.
Then why why are the 212 guys look so good?
They're good at noon on Friday and Saturday during the day.
No, at Friday night. Yeah, Friday night though they looked. They looked good on Friday night.
Yeah,
They looked even better at prejudge.
That's right. If you look at
you know what's crazy? When I saw the guys coming, I was texting Jay. I was like, Hany didn't look like his normal.
Right. On prejudge.
Andrea Shaw was on before them, and she looked harder than the guys.
Okay,
as weird as that sounds. And I don't know if it was the lighting or whatever else.
No, I don't think it's the lighting. I think it's also
6 meals deep.
Right. It's 6 meals deep. They eat less. Like, the women eat less, and then the guys that are lighter, that eat less, can handle it. But the guys that go flat more, so you have to feed the machine.
Like, the food has increased more and more and more all the time, right?
Yes. And it's really, really important to be able to make sure you stay full, because if you're flat on that stage, it doesn't work. At the end, you need to make sure that you have maintain a certain amount of fullness. And so even when we were going up and you were competing in 2009, it was earlier. It wasn't as late, you know what I mean, as it is now. I mean, I still hope that at some point they will reduce the amount, like do it sooner. And also, like, the other complaints that I heard, people messaging me are like, dude, we're on the East Coast. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning here, and we're just getting ready for prejudging to see the men's open or, whatever it was, or midnight. So I think that hopefully at some point they'll be able to balance that out, because I think they'll give a better product out of the athletes. And then they'll also be able to get more of the East Coast people dialed into it as well. But again, I don't know, I know that they're doing things behind the backgrounds, whether it's Dan and, and his crew, about trying to figure this out. But I do think that there's a couple of things that I wish they could change. One of them was that also getting rid of the meet and greet. The meet and greet is one of those things where they need to push that after the show. They need to be able to change that, because our athletes are getting bombarded with thousands of fans in that meet and greet, and they have to leave. Remember, I used to pull you like I made you like
to pull Phil.
I pulled you like Phil. Yeah, because you were still in the line.
Yeah, no, because Phil would be like, hey, I'm gonna go back and eat, and we go back there, and be like, get him out of here, and I'd be like, oh shit, I got to. Oh, sorry guys, Phil left.
Right, because he had to go, because I needed him out, because I needed to get him canned.
It's a lot. It's a big weight on their shoulders to do the press conference, meet and greets.
Right, and you're doing all of those things, and you got the VIP meet and greet, then you have the regular meet and greet, which is like an hour earlier. It's combined, but then you got to remember, like, if they take everything in consideration, it's also, they got to go get tanned. So I got to pull you to go get tanned, right? And, Shea Whitey here needs a lot of tan to be able to look right. And so we have to do 4 coats, 5 coats. And so, we had Carrie back there and with the sponge.
But that was back in that day. Now, I mean, they're using the spray tan.
But they still got to do several. They're going to be doing 3 or 4.
If it were up to me, the guys that go on at noon Saturday at the expo where there's 20,000 people screaming for them like Chris gets to have in all the other divisions. And I would have the meet and greet on Sunday at noon. So then they can spend 5 hours with their fans. Think of how much they could spend when it's over.
Right. But you got to remember, they need the 2 days. So what I would do is I would make it at noon on Friday.
Or that.
And we'd do it on Friday. And then you could do the Saturday finals. The only bad side of that, it takes care of the production of having 2 days that they would like. But I think that the only issue is going to be like, okay, now we got to dry out sooner. But it's going to be, it's hard to say how that noon on Friday with the Saturday night, coming back Saturday night because you got to stay longer in the zone.
Yeah.
That's a big time of not having. Yeah. It's a big gap, right? So it's hard to say if that's going to help. But obviously, going back to a 1-day show would be great. I just don't know how much they would lose when it comes to everything else in regards to the financial aspect, because you got to make it financial. That's why they're able to increase the prize money. That's why, I got to give it to these guys, $600,000, bro. $600,000. I mean, would you ever have thought that in this period of time it would have got to that fast, to get up there that fast?
Yeah,
200. I think if they knew this is going to happen, they can find a way to make it.
But they need to start now.
Yes.
So they need to start now, and you got to start looking at it and maybe starting it with some other shows and trying to see where that fits. And I think that that's going to be a challenge for Tyler and the guys over there. But it's one of those things that I think you're going to see a better product. I think you're going to see, and that's why, what's the 80s or 90s bodybuilders? It's because they would come in at noon.
Your coach knew 6 months out what time you were going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Another question I want to ask you. When you have one of your guys win, one of your guys second.
Yes.
Talk about what that's like.
It's heartbreaking.
Congratulating one, but the other time you have to console 2 people that not only are you coach, they're with your company and they're close to you and your family, your wife, your son, everything.
Look, again, going back to, you, right? When you're winning and Phil took second, it was a bit easier because Phil had never won yet. So Phil was just happy to be second at the time. So it's a lot easier. But when you lost, I was like, ooh, like it was a kick in the gut for me because I'm like, I wish you would have just listened to me and you would have and you would have retired. You know what I mean? Because
I don't know if you told me to retire though.
Yeah, bro.
Okay. No one wants to tell you to quit.
No, I just said I think because I guess the whole thing is just I don't want to say you're going to quit because I don't like to use that word. I think it's just that what C-Bum did, being able to do it on your terms, is a rarity. To be able to still be at that level at the top, right, and then still say it's good.
Well, remember he's winning in his 20s,
right?
And it's a lot easier to look at. I mean,
was he 29 or 30?
29. He's going to be 30 coming up.
So I mean, you've already won. I mean, how many do you win? 20? You know what I mean? It's like You have other things to venture out and do. Like we weren't. I didn't win my first Olympia till 33.
Right.
And I battled. Remember, I battled a lot of second places up till then.
A lot.
Mid-20s, right? So it's a different time. I mean, different division. I mean, the density that these athletes have to. I mean, look at Derek. Mr. Olympia loses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're kind of saying now like he's just not big enough. Mm-hmm. How do you win one year and not the next year you?
Right.
What do you think of Derek's look this week?
I think Derek looked good, but I think that Derek needs to create a proportionality, and I think that his body and upper body need to jive up more. And I think that he's done a good job putting some size on, but it was almost like remember 2 years ago when it was like his chest flat?
Yeah.
This year his chest is bigger and all of that, but it also makes his legs look a little bit more flat, especially from the front. But from the side, it looks really good. But he needs to get more of that more bulbous forward quad. Is
that maturity, Hany?
100%.
He's still a young guy.
You got to remember, he was 212. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, he was placing 12th in 212, right?
You'll never forget. You had Derek in the 212, and Hany was sitting like 2 seats over. When Derek walked out, I just looked at him and I saw that grit.
Well, he was just shredded, right? I mean, you look at what he's been able to do in such a short period of time. He went from 212, winning that. The very next year, he's second. Then the next year after that, he wins the Mr. Olympia. And then now the pressure, right? I mean, the guy opens up a gym. He's got, the world at his fingertips. He's got a baby. He's got a beautiful wife. Shout out to her. Because Jelson, I'll tell you this right now, like if you do not have a good woman in your life, and I've preached about this on my podcast, right? If you don't have a good woman in your life, you might as well have nothing. Because if you don't have that backup, that person to really have your back when the pressure's on, you will not be able to perform. Because they're going to help you with structure. They're going to help you be your soundboard. They're going to help you be that emotional.
Sleep good at night.
Yes, because you have somebody that's a solid partner. And I felt Carrie was that for you for many years. So that's, even though you guys aren't together, no offense, but at the end, I saw it. I saw what kind of, partner she was when it came to that. And it was very kind of like, I drew these conclusions for many years of doing this. I've been doing this for 30 years, guys. Right. And you need to have that.
So someone like a Derek, does he need time off, or is it time to maybe potentially go into some other shows and get some big money?
I think you can play it either way. I think that he could just say, hey, look, I want to do the Arnold and I want to be able to create a little bit more of that muscle maturity because I need to diet it down and kind of feel that. Or he could say, hey, look, I want to stop for a little while and reset. Either way, I think
his body's not tired.
No, his body's not tired. No, it just needs to be seasoned, right? Just like I said, all that new tissue in his legs he got this year was more apt to be able to kind of, as you dry out, they tends to go away a little bit. Just like the year before that, his chest wasn't as dense. This year, his chest is denser, but in his original muscle was always his back. So that's why his back is so grainy. But, his glutes in his back.
We saw a lot of content of you training all these guys out. You go down to Florida, Chris comes to you. We saw Derek, Hany training together. Mm-hmm. There were questions about that. Like, what's the mentality behind that? Do you bring them together to motivate them? Do you bring it together? How do you feel it benefits bringing the top two guys in the world together to train in the same gym when that, it was 400,000 was up for grabs. Now it's 600.
Right.
Like what's the aura in that room when you have, I know what it's like between Phil and I, cause we did it, but it's a different era now.
Right.
What's
different people.
Yeah. Different. People.
Right.
Two cultures, right?
Right. So it's one of those where I feel like they push each other. Very much like,
but the training, how's the training?
Well, the training's very different.
Okay.
Because Derek doesn't train like Hany, right?
Nobody does.
But Derek trains harder because of Hany.
Yeah.
Derek, just like you trained harder, you're not going to be like Ronnie, but you trained harder because of Ronnie. So the same situation's happening with Derek. Derek's upped his game considerably this year with his training because of what he knows he needs to go up against with a guy that's training like a maniac. Right. We had that conversation, last week, right? We talked about how do you let that guy train that way?
I asked him, I told Hany, so 6 plates.
Yeah.
On the squat aside. When I couldn't 2 mics out, and I couldn't believe it.
I think it was 10 days.
Yeah.
He was like, how is he doing this? I'm like,
and I said, aren't you scared? Yeah. And you're like, no, because if you saw the buildup, you'd understand, and time again, right?
Right. And I think that
you guys filmed that, by the way. Did you get scared when you saw that weight on there?
Yeah, I don't have,
really.
Yeah,
it didn't fit. It didn't fit any more plates. Well, you could duct tape it on. You could.
No, there's no more room.
Or maybe set some dumbbells.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, you can duct tape. You put a piece of duct tape around, and it will hold the weight. Trevor Smith used to do that on the hammer machine.
Oh,
yeah. You hold the
yeah. Or you get the extenders that Ronnie Coleman made for the leg press.
Oh, yeah, we got to figure that one out. Don't tell Hany.
Don't do that. Hany can't understand this. He's going to tell you to get out of one.
Yeah. No, there's definitely ways of doing it, but I'm just like, I know. We don't.
So maybe Hany purposely got that one so he knows he won't go above this.
No, it's one of those things. We have the 200-pound dumbbells. He maxes that out on our one-arm dumbbell rows after 5 exercises, right? Like, that's the thing, right? That's on his.
So what does Hany do in a room when there's no one watching?
Hany or Derek or
Hany. What does he do?
When it comes to, well, go look at his videos from Iran, right? Like he does crazy stuff.
I don't see as much content from him, so I mean, I wonder what it's like at his gym training, what they train like.
Yeah, it's he definitely, I feel he slows things down when he's with me. Like he does slow things down and goes deeper and does a little bit more and when he's with me, but he does a great job by himself. But I'm just saying is that I don't like it when he does crazy form. But again, when I was training you do those T-bar rows and you had like, I don't know, 7 plates on 745s on there. And you remember
I sent it to you last week.
Yeah. Dude, those were some of the most iconic workouts ever. You know, me telling you you're sandbagging and everything else. But it was one of those things where I felt like he is a person that you got to let him, because that's mental, right?
Yeah.
You got to let him be him. And that's the portion of it where I got to trust the athlete to a degree too, you know? And even though I go, look, dude, you'll hear me say it. I go, I don't think you should do this. And he's like, no, it's okay. We'll just do a strip set. I'm going to do 3 reps and then we're going to start with 6 plates and then I'm going to do a strip set. It's going to be fine. Don't worry. We're not going to do 10 reps with this. I'm going to try to 8 reps with this. I said, okay.
We should show it on the screen when we, it's intense.
Yeah. So what and again, going back to the Derek now has really kind of moved up his game and he's been able to get deeper depth, understand range of motion. Cause again, he's so tight. He's got so much new muscle on him. He's not as limber as Hany, right? Like, so he needs to be able to really focus on that. And that's what he's been trying to do. And it's definitely helping. But I think a lot of it has to be able to really get that full range of motion. Is going to help him quite a bit.
What's the game plan going forward now? What are you working on for Zex? Olympia's over. I know what it's like.
Well, Olympia's over. I mean, the biggest thing right now is just making sure that we're sunsetting C-Bum. Like, what's that look like right now? Because he wants to have a conversation. So it's going to be sitting down and just saying, hey, like, he wants to focus on the baby, the family, the business, all of these things. He's got so much going.
Rightfully so.
And I think that, so that was a really good high point of the weekend. The second and third place finishes, again, it's about Hany's a bit tired now, 4 shows. And he peaked.
So does he take a break now, you think?
I think it's one of those things at this point, if I had to make a call, yes. If it's my call, yes. But again, what I also have to take in consideration is there's a lot of money at stake now. So I don't,
for him.
I mean, and as much as you guys gave me shit the whole time when Derek didn't do the Arnold, you guys are assholes for that, by the way. So I want to just make sure to say thank you very much for being assholes. But at the end of the day, they make the decision, right? And who was right? He won the Olympia. So as much shit as you gave me, who was right?
Man. Hey, he makes the decision. Yeah.
Well, but he makes a decision, but he ended up, if he would have done the Arnold, he wouldn't have won.
Well, and listen, won Olympia. Right now, he's not currently the champ.
Right.
But
life change.
It's life changing. Your name is always, it doesn't matter if you won 8 or you've won 1. There's only one signature of yours that will be on that Sandow. And right now,
it's on there.
It's on there. And it's absolutely amazing. I mean, you guys know in 60 years, there's been 19 people in 60 years. And the bulk of them have just been in the last, since after Phil, right?
Do you think
it was 13, right?
Yes.
Do you think we'll see any big runs?
No.
Why?
Because I think that number one, I think it's harder because I feel like there's right now, there hasn't been a dominant force yet. Not to say it's impossible. I just don't see it right now. I think, and you and I talked about this years ago, I think that after Phil, it's going to be some 1s and 2s, maybe a 3 Pete, but I don't see it. But I also think it's also harder because I think that the focus of the fans have more sentiment than ever in some of these things. And like,
building it.
Yeah. Like, I just feel like that, they'll get tired faster because we're in the more of that TikTok generation.
Yes.
People want to, see change. Where before it was just a magazine.
Moving a lot faster.
That's right.
Than it ever has.
That's right. And so that's just the nature of the beast. Because if you look at my son, who's 11 years old, he's backstage, he's doing, he was in his arms in 13, right? Yeah. You come back here.
Like, she hunted me down at the expo. Please hold my son.
Yeah.
And now I'm having a full-fledged conversation with him. I'm talking to a little man.
Yeah. And he's backstage and he's interviewing C-Bomb. And he's like, going back there, right? But his generation, he goes in and he's on YouTube and he's on shorts and he's on, all that.
Shorts.
Exactly. It's that so people have a shorter attention span. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but I just think that it makes it more difficult because people want to see change. They don't want to see a decade of decadence, right? They want to see, like a couple of years and then let me see a new champ. So I think that makes it more pressure for everybody, the athlete, everybody to be able to make bigger changes because people want to be like kind of wowed, right? And I think that's kind of where I think it's going to happen. Now, again, could there be somebody that comes in? Absolutely. But I just think that it's going to be it's tougher to be able to go on a big run now.
I want to change totally different directions. Sure. Obviously, people know you as being one of the best coaches of all time, but not everybody knows you own a supplement line.
Yeah.
So talk to us about Evogen, the direction.
We talked a little bit about it with, how it started, and it was for the athletes.
Worldwide.
I see it everywhere.
Hady's giving you a lot of exposure in that region. Did you ever think your products would be all over the world at this point?
No, we're in like 75 countries. And did I think that? No. I mean, like I said, I never, you saw, it was never a plan. I didn't go, hey, look, what's the most profitable product? And let me come out with 3.
Your products were very, very, before anyone's were really that deep into ingredients, you always cared about what was in that bottle.
Right.
And it wasn't basic.
It was the sourcing.
Costly.
Yes.
To do what you did.
Yes.
I think you were the early trendsetter of that.
And also doing non-stim. I mean, when 1,3-DMAA was the most popular thing, my product, I started my company with a non-stim.
Which is really hot right now, by the way.
Yeah, well.
We're starting to learn a little more research. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're getting more research and saying, hey, stims aren't everything. I mean, everybody makes a high stim because there's some people
drinking
200 milligrams. My extreme.
Do you have some new stuff coming out?
Yeah, so this just launched. This my EVP Extreme powder in a bottle, but I've also included my AQ, my glycerol. So it's got 6 grams of citrulline, 3.2 a beta, but it's got 200 milligrams of caffeine that's time released, along with 1.5 milligrams of yohimbe with 10 grams of glycerol, because I'm a huge proponent of glycerol and I've been using it for years now, but I wanted it in a complete formula. So I took 3 of my products, the non-stim, the stim, took a scoop of each of those, took the best parts of it, added in the 10 grams with lion's mane and then DMAE for focus, and not going too crazy with the caffeine, 200 milligrams, but the 1.5 of Yo is going to help increase the intensity, but it makes it a very nice time release where you don't crash, and it gives you focus and pump. So it's all of the best aspects of 3 products that I make into one bottle that comes on within 5 minutes. And we launched it this weekend in 3 flavors. And
where are you going to be selling it?
It's going to be
on the website.
On the website. Yeah, it's going to be coming on the website soon, but it's going to be on through the distributors and DNA and everything else. And then that's
all the gyms will carry it. Supplement shop.
Yes, supplement shops, gyms.
You feel the grab and go market's very popular now?
Very, very. I think people are just
people want to just grab and go and not take time to
be able to mix things and do any of those things.
Convenience, right?
Right. It's a huge convenience factor. And I think that the other thing I want to be able to, actually, I wasn't going to really talk about till like next week or two, but I'm going to say while we're doing the show, is that I've expanded my partnership with Panada, and awesome. I'm going to be going out there and doing some more work with that. So I'm very excited.
Some input on equipment.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
Well, that's needed too.
So that potentially there's some new pieces that we do not see on the market. You have some ideas.
Any special?
Yes.
A new piece.
Yes. And
Dorian Yates had a piece of equipment named after him.
Right. He had the under
EYRO. Yeah.
Yeah. The EYRO.
Yeah.
And Rudy's amazing. He's at 72, 73 years young. He is so passionate about bodybuilding, and his son Eduardo, they're doing such a great job expanding it. And that's why I went and bought the gym. And people think, oh, did you get that gym for free? No, I paid for it. I could have gone and got a nice exotic car for the amount of money, a very high-end exotic car. Yeah.
I asked you, how you're liking Texas.
Uh-huh.
Headquarters are in Texas now. You have your own personal gym. I asked you about public gym.
Right.
You said no. It's more.
No. Right now, no. But there's some, it's always in the back of my head. But, you used to come to my house in Los Gatos.
Yes.
And stay with me. You, Phil, Ronnie would always come in. And I had that little 1,500 square foot house in Los Gatos. And going in to Texas and Dallas and being able to be in a really nice neighborhood, but also being able to have the room now. So that
I've been to your place.
Yeah.
I came out there.
Yeah.
It was a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, a couple of years ago. And being able to have, some garage space, put the lifts in there, have the room, but also like I've had Hady and C-Bum and their film crew all stay at the house. Where before, it's a 3-bedroom house.
That's why I built my big house when I did it. You remember how many people used to stay there?
We'd all stay there.
Yeah.
It was the whole crew.
It was great. I miss those days a lot.
Those were the best.
These are the memorable days, when you're building something and being able to provide that, right?
Right. It's like the MTV. What was it? Not
MTV Cribs?
No, not Cribs, but what's the other one that show that was a Road Rules, or was it when was it? It was like the reality show where everybody lived in the same house.
Real World.
Real World. It was Real World. Literally, that's what it's been. It's what's cool about it is the fact that you got Hady in one room, Chris in another. They would train together sometimes. We were trying to get Derek and Chris to be able to connect. But it was one of those things where the synergy was really good. Like the crew was awesome, being able to push each other. And I feel like those times that when we did it was also there. Like if you ever look at the back of the FSC7 DVD and it's got me, you and Phil, and you guys were jacked and big and you guys got a little more sloppy in the off season back then because there wasn't as much, there was no social media that you had to worry about. There was no guest appearances. There was very few, like compared to what it is like today. And shoots where now the guys have to like look tighter all the time.
Well, that's where your marketing is your own social media now. It's not the book, so you're writing for it anymore, right?
Right.
So it's a little easier for you to slide a little bit.
Yeah.
So you obviously train a lot of high level athletes. Do you train like a normal person?
No, not anymore. Like Shannon Sharp was there the other day. I think he came over a couple of weeks ago, who actually now has moved here to Vegas from LA. And so that's the thing. But what I am going to be doing that I've been working on all year long is launching my coaching platform. And so I have the FSC7 app. So that if you want workouts and for, $20 a month, you can go in there and get all those. But what I've been working on all year is a new system that I've been wanting to be able to incorporate so I can be able to get out to the masses more a coaching model with my coaches that I'm going to be working with, but they're under my roof.
Mentor them.
Yes. And they're within 30 feet of me. They're not like some remote guy that's in
your office.
Pakistan, right? Yeah. In my offices. And so that is something that I'm very, very excited to be able to work on.
When is that happening?
That is coming up right now. So basically there's a waiting list and you have to be vetted. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a similar version of what I've done with my athletes on my pro level, where I actually have to vet the athlete and be able to see what they're doing. And it's not necessarily for just people who are like competing. I'm really looking for lifestyle.
Yeah.
Is what I'm looking
for. Be a high level CEO that just wants their life better.
That's right. And work with me and my team all under one roof. And be able to do that, and that's it's going to take all of the pieces that I've been able to kind of learn and configure, and I'm very excited to announce that it's a whole system.
Do you see yourself being a competitive top coach for Olympia athletes forever?
No.
So right now, if I said, "Hany, I found this guy training at my gym. He's 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can be Mr. Olympia."
Mm-hmm.
What do you say?
I say that I'll work with my team and see how we're going to be able to do it. It's going to be an evolution of what I'm doing now and being able to do the system. I mean, literally my system is it's the first time I'm announcing this it's called the Truth System. It's not a typical coaching platform, because I named it after my podcast only because it's my no bullshit approach. It's all about the truth. What is your potential? What are you trying to do? What do you need to put in to be able to get out of it? And again, I didn't expect to actually talk about it here today, but just because of the fact that it's my mantra that and you're like, Hany's a pain in the ass. Absolutely, I'm a pain in the ass.
It's accountability.
That's right.
What most people need.
Yes.
And that means they need the structure and they like that to be created. And I feel like there's no one better with that structure than you, meaning I feel like you're touch and go in a sense, but you still have formulas that it's like each individual puts together, and you know how to handle emotions where you've dealt with everything.
Yeah.
I mean, family issues to marital issues to stress, the body, sleep patterns, hormone levels, all these things, they all come into some sort of action with someone getting in their best shape. I mean, you just talked about this. They can't, meet the Olympians is like a stress factor, right? I mean, okay, that's 24 hours before they're on stage. How does that affect someone? Cortisol, right? All these things.
Right, being on your feet, not eating, being able to be stressed about.
Out of a routine.
Think about it. If you have a 212 guy, it's the next morning.
That's even worse. And that's what I'm saying. It's and then you know, at least Classic doesn't go until Saturday. So you have a day to recuperate.
I forgot that Friday that started.
Right. So you have all these people that are getting ready to go on stage. But it's all of those things that I wanted to be able to share. And that's one of the reasons why for 25 years, it's been, well, how come you don't go more than 5 people, 10 people, 7 people? And it was like, no.
You're all in. You give too much. You give too much. That's, you're all in. It's,
yeah, and you know that.
With them. Yeah.
Very few are.
And that's how I've always done it, and that's why I do it, and that's why I wanted to take aspects of that and be able to create a platform to have a foundation. And so if you go to hanyrambod.com, you can put your email address in, and then
we'll link it.
Okay. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I've, came up with my supplement solution, but I hadn't been able to work on my actual solution in terms of the information solution. And now I have, and that's how it's a premium system, because I'm not going to water down my product. Just like I don't do Evogen, I'm not going to do anything on my information side. So now I'm excited to be able to do that, and also being able to still travel. I mean, I remember when you and I were talking about like what you're going to do right after the Olympias, and it was like right around that time, 2010 or 11, and you said, bro, because I was like, what do you do with your supplements, and what do you do with this and that? And you're like, bro, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to do anything. I don't want to travel.
Deadlift. I'm never going to squat again.
But not the workouts. The travel you told me you're never going to do. You travel more now than you ever have.
Yeah, I've actually slowed down, believe it.
A little bit.
No, when I asked Matt, have I slowed down?
Yes. And
that's not because work has slowed down. Let's put it that way.
It's one of those things where things he would have never said no to, he says no to now.
Okay. But you know what's cool about Jay? And this is something that I tell people all the time. As big as of a name that he has, he'll still go back to Max Muscle Placerville and turn around and take care of the people that helped him,
that took care of him when he wasn't there.
Yeah. And
still does it.
And that were like just long-term fans. He would go with me to Max Muscle in San Jose.
I go to Dave Lieberman's show, and
you go to Lonnie's show. I mean, these people that have been around for 20 years, and you were going into there, and you remember when, we come out there, and I think, did we have you and Ronnie once, right? It was you and Ronnie I'd brought out to the store, and it was like, it was so fun. And we go, and then Bill, and then we go, and then we had, dude, Matt, did you ever hear about the birthday parties?
Like here and there, but no.
Oh man, Vernon Davis came out from the Niners, and we all went out. Buendia was with us.
Yeah, we liked, he brought that up when we had dinner. We all went to San Francisco, It was in San Fran.
Yeah.
We went to,
yeah. We went to the club.
Yeah. I remember.
Fairness is like, when are the boys getting here?
Yeah.
Or how about when we went to the Napa? In Napa?
Remember we saw that car roll over on
the Suburban.
Yes.
It's Suburban just like yours, but
slow motion, man. Scary.
We're driving to Napa from San Jose, and then on the
coming the opposite direction.
Yeah.
It's like 4 lanes, each side.
Tell them.
And like literally I'm driving, and like, honey, were you driving you were in Range Rover or something?
Yeah.
And I said, yo, look at that truck. And it was like swerving left and right, like swerving.
Coming at you guys?
No, it was on the opposite side. And it was like swerving. And all of a sudden I said, it's going to roll. And it started rolling really bad.
Yeah. It literally like it was rolling like this.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I was like
And we were like, it was coming towards us on the other side, and we like literally saw it.
And we thought that it was going to be fly over
the median.
The medium to us on our, and we're in the fast lane. So we're like, this thing can flip up Final Destination type stuff.
Fishtailing.
Yeah. And it fishtailed, and then it started rolling from on its side. And we're like, oh my God, this is going to come into our lane. But we went out and remember we went to the castle, the winery. We went to a castle winery, and he doesn't drink wine. He's like, and he's like, where's the sweet one, bro? So, and it was me, Farron, as him, and
I would like to go to another winery though. I mean, Angie talks about it all the time, but I'd like to go, man.
It was fun. It was fun, but it was we had a lot of really good times about India, about that trip.
Remember Phil was mad because I got the big room.
Yeah,
that's right. I lost the Olympia, and I still had the big suite there, so we were all hanging out there, and I was just throwing up, and then Honey's like, all right, let me see what you look like. And I go back to the toilet, and I puke again, and he'd be like, all right, let's see how you look.
I'm like, no, keep puking, you look better. Keep puking, look better.
It feels like they're sitting in the row looking at each other like, oh my God, is he like dying in there? Because I was like, why did I get sick?
I don't know. You had stomach virus.
Oh, yeah.
You had stomach virus, yeah.
To compete. We did the shrew.
Yeah. I remember they built the stage like 10 minutes before. Dude, somebody fell off the stage and it broke because in one area of it wasn't built properly, and the guy like fell through it. And then Steve, I think Big Steve was there, Weinberger, and he was like, dude, the guy just fell. Did you see that?
I thought we were supposed to start the show, but it wasn't ready to start yet because there was no stage built.
That's right. And they built it in.
Oh, we did, yeah.
Dude, they were literally building it. It was crazy. Some of the trips that we did and some of the stuff, and and then Dennis Wolf lost his passport and then went into the seat, and then they had to take the seat apart, and he's freaking out. He's sweating, and he's like, I swear, I think he dropped a couple of places.
One of the better times, though, we got to train. Myself, Phil, and Ronnie Coleman went to train in the UK. We're at Body Power, and we went to that
gym.
That gym. It was like in a basement
and we walked
downstairs.
There's some videos of us there. Did you see it?
Train. I haven't seen it.
I saw some videos.
We all got to kind of train. That was the only time we all got to train together at that.
With Ronnie too, because usually it was me, Phil, and Jay, and then that was the time Ronnie was there too, and that was
We'll have to bring it up. Ronnie's going to be here tomorrow.
Okay. That's awesome. But yeah, I mean, it's been a good run, man. It's been a really good run. So I think that I'm looking forward to doing the stuff. We got the partners at MegaFit. They've been amazing. Billy and Meg and all them. Rate them now. Young LA. Those guys, shout out to Gary and those guys. That's those guys are awesome. And just being able to do stuff with people that you enjoy and people that you like. And, those are the best partnerships, because you're not, saying, hey, someone's paying you to be a part of something. It's something you truly believe in or you're already a part of. Like, like the situation with Panada was really good because I was already a customer. So, it's one of those things where it's an
excited to see what you come up with, man.
Yeah.
I wait to come out and check out the gym.
Yeah, you haven't been out there.
Yeah, I'm not going to train like
when I was out there last time. You had just released it, and you were telling me about the renovations that were happening and all this stuff.
Yes, it was all getting set together. But you got to come to Dallas. You come for nationals or no?
I don't know.
No, it's December. Oh, December this year. Yeah.
Maybe we'll see. Maybe there's a reason I'll come down and do the podcast.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
I know it's a crazy weekend, and like, listen, I called you. I texted you, and I'm like, hey, man, no pressure, but we're putting it out there, and I was shocked you called me yesterday when all the stress was over and said, hey, man, you want to shoot? What are you doing today?
Yeah, I said, let's shoot it. I was
hoping we'd get you on, but you have the top guys, and the last thing on your mind is shooting our podcast.
No, I mean,
that's your priority.
Yeah, it's my priority, but now that the priority, we talked about even trying to do it earlier in the week, and I'm like, that's obviously an impossibility. It's just not as much as I'd like to do it.
Your stress seemed a lot cooler, a little calmer this year, and I think,
it's the calmest I've been. Because I feel like it's at that point right now where I stress over the things I can control and try not to stress over the things I don't. And it took me only, 30 years of doing this to start to finally get to where I'm at. And just, and ultimately I just, I wouldn't be here without my wife. My son.
Are they back now, or
they just went back? Okay. They went back last night. So they went back.
Is he at school or something?
Yeah.
So are you going to take him on a vacation now? our last conversation?
Yes.
Well, like, I'm going on vacation soon.
Yeah.
Obviously, you weren't able to.
Yeah. This year we weren't able to.
He just mentioned Italy. It's probably a
We want to go back to Italy. We want to like do that. My son like wants to go and have Wagyu A5 at somewhere with bluefin tuna because he knows all.
getting him.
He just gets it. He learns
The
it.
diet, nutrition stuff. He probably knows more nutrition than an 11-year-old kid.
He's like,
Maybe Cam can diet your comeback.
Yeah.
he looked at Hottie. He goes, I think he needs a little more fats. Give him some salmon.
Yeah.
That's it.
See if you're going to pass the torch.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I see if he starts.
Yeah, coach under your.
He's done 12 Olympias in 11 years. So he's 11 years old, but he was in their belly. Yeah. So every Olympia, but it's been great. But like I said, shout out to Farina's. I mean, as you know, like even when you were getting ready, she would work on
She
you.
massaged me and she did my back work.
Yeah, she did your back work. She would adjust you. She was just like just little things that because she's
Their table out in the middle of the living room.
Yeah.
Oh, let's work on it. So I didn't have one.
Chiropractor, right?
Yeah, she's a chiropractor, and then she was also an ex-competitor. So that's why she loves it so much. She wouldn't have missed the Olympia for the world. But
Man, we appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure the fans are going to love this one. So
let's have a good time.